the City of Southfield regular meeting of the Planning Commission for December the 14th, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Spence, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Goodwin-Dye.
Present.
Ms. Bernuti.
Present.
Mr. Griffiths.
Here.
Mr. Huntington.
Present.
Mr. Martin.
Present.
Dr. Stevens-Gunn.
Present.
Mr. Willis.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum to conduct business this evening.
Commissioners, we have an extensive agenda for this evening. I'm quite sure everyone has had an opportunity to peruse it. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernuti and second by Commissioner Martin that we accept the agenda for this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries that we accept the agenda for this evening.
If I may, Madam Chair, who made the motion in the second?
Ms. Bernuti?
Okay, got
Mr.
it.
Martin.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Spence, are there any announcements and communications for this evening?
I don't have any at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Spence, can you give us some background on public hearing item number PZTA 22-0004?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this item is a proposal for a text amendment to amend Title V Zoning and Planning, Chapter 45, for requirements for adult use or also known as recreational marijuana facilities. The consultant provided, excuse me, the Planning Commission with an overview last week, and I will invite the consultant to come back up and basically go through the ordinance provisions, going through the difference between medical marijuana and recreational, as well as providing information on the proposal for a text amendment to allow for recreational use in the city. So with that, I'd ask the petitioner or the consultant to come up and provide an overview of adult use.
Good evening, Commissioners. As just summarized before you, I'm here before you tonight to discuss a proposed adult use marijuana zoning ordinance amendment for the city. My name is Mario Ortega. I am a principal planner with McKenna. We are a planning and design firm that advises municipalities on various community planning, zoning ordinance, and design for the communities. So tonight, as mentioned, this is regarding adult use marijuana. Colloquially, it has been known and was on the ballot in 2018 as recreational marijuana. However, the state agency that was created to regulate this type of marijuana labels it as adult use. So, and throughout this evening, we'll be going over, this will be a common theme, we'll be going over the various terminology that has been created and regulations created to regulate adult use marijuana and the various ordinances and standards you currently have, and then, as mentioned, the proposed changes. With the adoption of the latest statute, which is officially titled the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, or MRTMA, adults over 21 years of age and older can purchase marijuana for their own personal use. Marijuana is regulated by the various agencies. Under its current form, the agency is called the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. In addition, the CRA also regulates caregivers that provide medical marijuana to registered qualifying patients under the first Medical Marijuana Act adopted by the state, and the CRA also regulates medical marijuana facilities. Those commercial facilities that were established under a second act, the MMFLA, to allow for certain facilities to grow and create and distribute medical marijuana. So the city, with the advent of the medical marijuana legislation, has already codified and regulates medical marijuana. This is located both in your zoning ordinance and then in a separate general law ordinance or licensing ordinance adopted by City Council. In addition to that, the city already has on the books licensing regulations for medical caregivers. The various sections are already cited in this slide presentation. And I think this is, once again, going to be a key theme of our approach and of this evening, because there are certain issues that, as the Planning Commission, you have purview over based on state legislation and what you're normally used to. That is making sure that any use that is regulated, that comes into the city, is compatible with adjacent property owners, that can exist with them, and will not negatively impact any existing or future land use. However, when it comes to marijuana, there are a lot of different other, there are a lot of other issues that require the city to regulate, but that don't fall under the purview of zoning. Those types of issues need to be addressed by the licensing ordinance. The licensing ordinance will regulate various aspects, such as the number of facilities that would be allowed within the city, how those applicants would be prioritized, and other specifics related to adult use marijuana, such as what is also enabled by the legislation, which is the social equity programs. We'll get into that as we go on in this presentation. But I think I just wanted to make that a key point for everyone and everyone under this consideration. Tonight, we're talking about the zoning ordinance specifically, and then we'll also be addressing some of the issues that might come up might be related to licensing. As a Planning Commission, I'm sure the council values your opinion, and should you have any other opinions about those other licensing issues, that's something that you may want to bring up, but it wouldn't necessarily be about editing any or changing any of the proposed language. It would be about offering your opinion to them with regards to those licensing issues. So when it comes to this new type of marijuana regulation, there are key differences between the medical and the adult use. But there are also similarities. Once again, the same agency, CRA, regulates both types of marijuana. The power held by the municipalities is similar, rests in your zoning, your licensing. The key aspect, of course, difference is the fact that the use of marijuana. Medical marijuana is for patients that have been certified by a medical professional to find the need for medical marijuana to alleviate ailments, whereas adult use marijuana is for the recreational use by a person that's 20 years old or older. Similarly, also, when it comes to medical marijuana, there are similar categories, but the facilities are different from for the adult use from medical. There are some additional facilities that are in the adult use. So this slide demonstrates that first, on the left, the type of facilities that are allowed under the medical marijuana statute, and on the right, the facilities that are allowed under the adult use statute. As you can see, they're very similar. We'll get into a little bit more detail those in a moment, but these five, a grower, a facility that can just grow the marijuana, processor, those that will be packaging and creating other types of product from the marijuana, a secure transporter, and safety compliance facility, which is basically a lab which tests the types and quality of marijuana, and are all similar for both categories. one key difference is that under one of the differences you will find tonight is the terminology is slightly different between the two, thus requiring the need for this additional adult use marijuana regulation. Under medical marijuana, they call it a provisioning center, the location in which a patient comes to obtain their marijuana, whereas on the adult use side, they call it just a standard retailer. As mentioned, there are some differences. The adult use legislation created new categories, and in addition, it also allows for the state agency, CRA, to actually create new categories as well as on their own. So the adult use regulations also allow for the creation of a micro business. That would be a location which does, on a smaller scale, all the activities necessary to prepare marijuana for adult use, that being doing the growing, processing, and actual sales, retail sales, all in one location. That's allowed under the MRTMA. They also allow for, based on CRA's creation, what's called a consumption establishment. That is a location in which adults can go to and consume marijuana they already have. They also allow for an event organizer. This is a licensing which would allow for someone to organize an event that would promote not only marijuana in general, but also allow for the consumption of and sale of accessories and paraphernalia, and then also an excess grower. Both statutes actually have slightly different quantities for the number of plants a grower can have on their facility, and then the MRTMA allows for excessive grower, what they termize stacking of licenses, so that a applicant could have hold multiple licenses and then, for example, have 4,000 or 6,000 plants on their facility. So a key aspect of both legislation and before you tonight is the fact that just because these types of facilities are created by state statute and exist, there's by no means is the city required to accommodate all of them. The statute does empower the city with a lot of different tools to slowly, if they choose, to slowly incorporate them and determine if they're compatible with other uses in your municipality. So things from like the quantity, their location, what's typically termed as time, place, and manner of these facilities, they can all be regulated. And a lot of that does fall under the zoning ordinance. And so we're going to see tonight, when we get to the text, how the approach we're suggesting to begin consideration of these. To briefly go over the facilities once again, growers, on these slides you will have the official, a segment of the definitions from the statutes. So once again, these show that there's a different terminology. However, they basically are the same intent. A grower for medical, specifically says it cultivates, dries, and trims marijuana, whereas adult use, it just specifically says cultivation. A key difference being under adult use marijuana, Class A is 100 plants allowed on site, Class B 500, Class C 2,000. Under medical, it's 500, 1,000, and 1,500.
Through the chair to Mario, aren't these stackable?
That's correct.
So, let's make it clear that someone could have 10 Class A licenses and 20 Class Cs.
That is correct. For when it came to the medical marijuana, that's, I believe, when they initially started to allow for the stacking. And then under the MRTMA and then CRA's creation, they basically codified it. They put it in the statutes, they put it in the Michigan rules that they could allow for a stacking. So one applicant could conceivably hold 10 Class C licenses. And then the result is a facility that's size and scale can have a tremendous impact on adjacent property if not properly regulated. So that, in that aspect, the size and scale of it and whether it should or shouldn't be in a particular location in a community, that is definitely a zoning topic that is important to consider when you're considering this ordinance amendment. Processors, Once again, these are two different types of, their terminology is different, but the intent is the same. It is to take marijuana and create a product that for certain people, either by choice or just because they feel they would not prefer to smoke marijuana, they create products that is another method of ingesting and consuming the marijuana. So, but both adult use and medical marijuana statutes allow that. Secure transporter is merely a person licensed to take marijuana from one licensed facility to another facility. So some might just be one grow location, and they just sell it to a processor in another location, so it has to be transported. That's what the secure transporter does. Safety compliance facility is basically, for all intents and purposes, a lab facility that takes marijuana that is grown by these licensed facilities to ensure the quantity, to determine the level of pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, however method a particular grower utilizes, to make sure there is nothing harmful in the marijuana and it's safe for consumption. It also measures other levels, I believe, of the different types and quality of the marijuana. When it comes to, as I mentioned, the terminology, medical marijuana, they call them provisioning centers, and for adult use, they're called retailers. They are basically the location in which a community, the public or registered patients can go and obtain marijuana. The state does regulate these somewhat differently. Excuse me, I shouldn't say differently. They have very explicit regulations for all facilities, but in this particular case, if a facility was both to have medical marijuana, say initially be a medical marijuana provisioning center and want to become a retailer, there are specific requirements the state has for a separation of those two different types of marijuana, both in the building, just so that way it can be very clear what is medical marijuana and what is adult use, and because there's also highly regulated in terms of quantities and that sort of thing. And I think that's a key aspect because there are a lot of other aspects related to marijuana facilities that might seem appropriate to regulate at the local level. However, there are a lot of regulations at the state level that are appropriate, mainly because the state has the resources to deal, like, say, for example, the background checks of applicants. Initially, when these ordinances the statute was adopted, the idea was locals needed to consider those type of issues, but the state does a very good job, and they have their own criteria for someone to be an applicant. So so it's important to, once again, focus the local ordinances on those issues that are not addressed by the state and that are important to consider for local compatibility for these proposed uses. When it comes to the key differences in licensing, this is where we get into that difference between zoning and licensing regulations and our approach. This begins to outline our approach. As mentioned, the city already has medical marijuana ordinances on the books for zoning and for licensing. From the zoning approach, I think it's most important in order to make sure that any adult use regulations have stand up to the most scrutiny by being consistent. So before you tonight, this language for the zoning ordinance is very consistent with your medical. In terms of the locations, we're proposing the same districts for the adult use facilities as the medical marijuana facilities. We're also making sure that the distance requirements from sensitive uses, such as schools and residences, are the same. And then we also want to make sure that we use the same approval procedures. So when it comes to growers, processors, transporters, and retailers, they all require special land use approval currently, and we are suggesting they require special land use approval for adult use. And then currently the medical marijuana safety compliance, the lab facilities, currently are permitted as a permitted use in a couple districts, and we're suggesting, once again, to be consistent and suggest that they be the adult use safety compliance would be a permitted use in a couple of different districts. And the slide demonstrates that we're maintaining and suggests you maintain the same setback requirements. 500 feet, these facilities must be 500 feet from a residential district, residential use, drug-free school zone, other adult regulated uses, schools, religious institutions, child care facilities, or parks. And then also 1,500 feet from pawn shops or alternative financial service establishments. That's an example of the consistency we're proposing. Some of the differences are mainly focused in the licensing requirements. As I mentioned, when it comes to the standards for the applicants to meet and the actual procedures, it's important that those be kept in the licensing ordinance, because the city council can adopt and modify those as needed. And once again, the Zoning Enabling Act really doesn't enable you to regulate these type of issues, such as also in including the number of licenses. Our recommendation, working with city staff, is in the licensing ordinance, basically to start out at a smaller number, mainly because so that way you can see how, once these uses get established, if they're compatible based on their location they choose, how they operate, and the other, and making sure that they're in compliance with not only the local ordinances but the state statutes as they move along. So that way, but that's important to keep that that approach of a minimal number, so that way you don't necessarily be inundated with a lot of facilities without knowing their impact. And then there's also, finally, when it comes to adult use marijuana, the idea that of a social equity program. It's important, based on the past history of marijuana enforcement throughout the state, that they have disproportionately affected certain communities in the state. So the state recognizes this, and so the city could have the option of adopting social equity requirements that would allow for disadvantaged individuals to benefit from the fact that marijuana would be considered, is legal in the state and would be allowable in the city if adopted by if this ordinance is adopted. So then finally, getting into the language before you tonight, the adult use marijuana would be a brand new section in your zoning ordinance. Some of the highlights would be that the definitions are taken directly from the state statute and are intended to make sure that if there's any question by an applicant of what we mean by a certain term, that they can go to that definition section. We identified the permitted establishments, though that primarily being the adult use marijuana grower, processor, safety compliance, transporter, and retailer. Once again, similar to the medical marijuana, and that's it. Because we also are suggesting at this time prohibiting establishments that are new, that once again, not only it's not known their impact, but other communities in the state, even though it's allowed in the state, haven't allowed them. For example, a consumption establishment, it's created by the rules of CRA, there's only 2 communities in the entire state of Michigan which currently have ordinances on the books that would possibly allow a consumption establishment, that being Ann Arbor and Hazel Park. So right now, it's just something that is new to everyone. No one's really tried it, to the best of my knowledge. I don't believe one even is open. So I don't believe at this point in time it's appropriate for the city to consider that type of use without a deep dive into what would be necessary to make sure such a place is compatible with the surrounding and adjacent uses. The ordinance then also deals with location. Once again, we specify the specific districts they would be allowed, the same as your medical marijuana. And then we get into use requirements. When it comes to adult use marijuana, there are certain aspects that need to be regulated specific to adult use, that being the security, making sure that the security of establishment is appropriate and is coordinated with the city police. the wastewater treatment, making sure that every facility has a plan to make sure that they do not negatively impact the stormwater and/or more importantly, the sewer facilities of the city, and then odor control, making sure that the characteristics of marijuana, which is most influential and adjacent uses and could negatively impact them, is controlled effectively. The ordinance then gets into the application submittal requirements, outlining the fact that they do certain of them, they all require special land use except for the safety compliance, which we have permitted. And then we go through the review procedures and authorization and those standards for approval. Standards for approval mainly being similar for the special uses to other special uses. This ordinance amendment in front of you tonight also goes into cleaning up some other aspects that the city staff wanted us to address, that being making sure the definitions have all the appropriate related terms for marijuana in that section of 5.3. And then current policy moving forward would be to the eventual elimination of the Northland overlay district, so that the amendment text goes through that act of striking out medical marijuana in the Northland overlay district, and then then going through and specifically allowing the safety compliance in the OS district.
Excuse me, through the chair, Mario, we also identified section 5.60E may need to be amended, and that specifically dealt at the time in 2019 with prohibiting adult use recreational marijuana. So that's not listed in the slideshow, but that's another section that, should this move forward, we would need to make an amendment to.
Yes, because that ordinance, one other tool given by the state law, MRTMA, was that you could just prohibit them outright. The city did that in 2019. They adopted section 5.60-E that, in addition to a general resolution at the city council level, the city went and adopted a amendment to the zoning ordinance and put it explicitly in the zoning ordinance that titled marijuana establishments prohibited. So to be consistent, to make sure that the ordinance is enforceable, we would have to go through the process of eliminating section 5.60-E. Therefore, so that way adult use marijuana facilities would be permitted in the city. And finally, before you on this text, on this slide, is a list of the various districts in which the facilities would be allowed. And as mentioned, it's the exact same as the medical marijuana facilities currently allowed in the city. I believe we will also be hearing and having a discussion with regard to the licensing standards from the city attorney. However, I can take questions now or at a future time.
Through the chair, I would recommend just a brief overview from our city attorney, opening the public hearing, and then after the public hearing, our team would be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Dawn King, the City Attorney. Mario did an excellent presentation speaking to the zoning ordinance, and as you've heard, the licensing ordinance will be separate from the zoning ordinance, of course, and within that, just as we did with the medical, it's going to go through the city clerk's office. There's going to be standards, just as we had with the medical marijuana, because you will have to have a license to have an adult use marijuana establishment in the city of Southfield, and that's pursuant to the state law. So there's no way around that. There's going to be a lot of things required in the licensing, which, number one, we're going to want them to have zoning approval, which is what we did for the medical. Then there's going to be the other plans, again, the security, lighting, different things that may have, I'm not sure, they'll come through planning to some extent, but when they come for the license, we have the application, there's going to be a checkbox, and so we'll see all the things that they've done, but it's still going to have to go through all the other departments. There's going to be the licensing fee, and of course, there's the penalties that will be assessed if you do not have your license, and they need the pre-qualification license from the state. Mario touched upon the number, so when we do discuss this as far as the licensing ordinance, it'll probably go to the legislative committee of the council. And of course, again, we rely on the zoning text amendments that'll be made, because that will assist council, of course, should they decide to go forward as far as the number. You've heard about the social equity piece, where the state has criteria, and we will also be looking at that within the application, as well as things like, do you already have a prior business in the city of Southfield? So, again, Mario did a wonderful job, because then that helps me as I begin to draft, or we've actually worked together drafting licensing, but the first criteria is that they will have to get the zoning approval, and then the other departments will be looking at it, but they will go to the clerk's office for the license, and we will be working with administration and other departments as far as how to prioritize certain applications, should we get more applications for licenses than the number set by council. So, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for PZTA 22-0004. All those interested in sharing your thoughts or comments, please come to the mic. You have 3 minutes to share your comments. Public hearing for PZTA 22-0004. Public hearing for PZTA 22-0004. Given none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Planning Commissioners, Commissioner Huntington.
I think the presentation was very thorough. I did have one question. So as far as the provisional centers we have right now, how difficult would it be for them to take on the adult use?
To their specific cases, that would have to be judged individually. But there are some approaches that could be done in the licensing ordinance if the city so choose to allow them to take on adult use as well. That's a possible approach. It's been suggested into other communities as well, but I'm afraid I'm not that familiar with the specifics of the different facilities, so I wouldn't know their capacity. But generally speaking, even a lot of the facilities that have in other communities adopted adult use, they were previously medical. They did transfer over to adult use, and generally speaking, their characteristics aren't that dissimilar. The adult use aren't that dissimilar from medical, because it's the same product. Excuse me, it's not. It's a product that's used similarly by other uses. So the only issue being the level of activity for the retailers. The retailers tend to get pretty busy on Friday nights and Saturdays.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Griffith?
If I could just add, existing medical marijuana facilities would still have to go through the same process of special land use, and then once they receive their zoning approvals, they still have to get licensing and meet those qualifications. So in theory, they'd be able to do both if they meet the licensing and they receive their zoning. But it's not an automatic.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Griffith?
Along that same line, I would have to assume that anybody that's a medical cannabis company really wants to be a retail cannabis company. They already have the investment in the building, they already have the location. It only makes sense to continue that on. Then it seems like if there's a certain cap to what was already approved, that cap needs to be increased incrementally. To what extent, I'm not sure, but slowly, I guess, seems to be the consensus. I don't disagree with any of that. I'd be in favor of all those things. It sounds like that decision's not made yet. The numbers are not, they're not being discussed at this point.
Yeah, I would just add that through the licensing, there could be prioritization of existing medical marijuana that would give them higher priority than just a new case. I would imagine that our cap of 3 would probably conservatively grow to 5 or 6 as a starting point, just to make room for new businesses of each kind. But that will come as part of the licensing discussion with the city council.
Then I've just seen various scoring systems and checklists, which always seem to be called to what's appropriate. I don't know the answer. And there's also the theory of if you just open it up to everybody, there's a potential flood of businesses coming in. So somewhere in between is the answer. Glad that's not my decision solely. And it's interesting to see how this continues to evolve over the years.
Yeah, I've stated that the coming up with the regulations is going to be a lot easier than scoring a priority system. Should we have be inundated with applications above and beyond the number of facilities that are available?
If I may, I would just agree with you that those community, and speaking from experience in other communities, those that have chosen a scoring system, those are the ones that can be subject to litigation, mainly because it requires so many different processes and so many different requirements and interpretations that it opens it up to an applicant feeling they're aggrieved, and then then going forward. Likewise, I've also been in communities which that just went ahead and just opened the doors, floodgates, and they did get inundated, and they're still feeling their way through, but it's not necessarily anything that that I would recommend, mainly because if you were to be inundated, it could negatively impact the variety and the different uses that would be within your industrial base, for example. I mean, granted, you have a pretty substantial industrial base and a variety of them now, but if you were to open it up, there's no holding for the vagaries of the real estate market. Things could get pretty wild if that was allowed to happen. So finally, our recommendation is going to be to utilize actually a prioritization system. It's not necessarily points, but the city together identifying characteristics that they find are a priority, and then applicants that have those characteristics would be considered part of that priority.
Commissioner Willis?
Thank you. I am surprised there were no questions, but I have a few. So I'd like to start with the now possibility of a consumption establishment. I believe that we've said, I think you said that there were 2, Ann Arbor and Hazel Park. What can be done once I purchase from a retailer and I have the goods in my pocket legally, and I go to a hookah lounge or a smoking lounge where smoking is also legal? How do you prevent that kind of ingesting?
There are 2 ways to do it, and I actually recommend what you would consider possibly a belt and suspender approach, meaning while 1 is adequate, 2 is always better. So the state statute specifically grants property owners the option of restricting consumption of marijuana on their site, whether they be the property owner, a resident of the property, or a property manager. So a property owner within the city can choose to prohibit that. Number 2, going back, some of the other aspects that you're going to deal with, and that the whole state has to deal with, is an interpretation of the state law. So I'm not an attorney, I don't know how that will eventually peter out in the courts. If someone, say, as you just theorized, could went and did that in a facility because the property owner is allowing it to occur. My reading of the state statute is that it's not supposed to be allowed for public use. You're not supposed to consume or smoke it in public, based on my interpretation of the state law. Whether that will stand up in court, once again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know that. So, from a planning and zoning standpoint, what I've done in my other communities is also explicitly amend your zoning ordinance to prohibit the adult use of marijuana in those type of facilities. Other facilities, such as hookah lounges, smoking lounges, any place that has that state exemption that allows for smoking on site, within the zoning ordinance, you can prohibit, you can specifically prohibit the consumption of marijuana.
Okay, thank you. I have more. Thank you. There's language here about event organizing. The largest event that I know of occurs on April the 20th in Ann Arbor. It's attended by people all over the world, as I understand. Are you suggesting that an event should be specifically part of the statute? Or again, how do you deal with it in other communities to avoid that gigantic smoking?
If I could, we are not recommending adult consumption, special events, or excessive grow, but we have to define them in our ordinance so that we can regulate. So at this time, we are not recommending that we consider those three. Slow as you go approach. Let's work with the types of facilities that we're already familiar with medical marijuana, and later revisit those. So we're not proposing to have these special events like the 420 events that happen all over the country.
Okay, I'll pass now. I may, but I'll pass for now.
Commissioner Martin?
Just have one question, a clarification on the adult use, the cultivation. We've been given two sets of numbers, 500 for Class A, 1,000 for Class B, and 1,500 for Class C. And then again, we were given 100 for Class A, 500 for Class B, and 2,000 for Class C. Which is it?
So the first set of numbers, the 500, 1,000, 1,500, that is for medical. That's under the medical facilities. That's the quantities for Class A, B, and C. The adult use is the second set of numbers, the 100, is it 500 and then 2,000?
Yeah, you see what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Forgive me.
Use here, and adult
Too
use
many
here.
details. I want to make sure I get right before.
And that's,
Yes, so under MRTMA, adult use, their Class A is 100, their Class B is 200, and Class C is 2,000. The PowerPoint presentation that was on the screen tonight is accurate. You might have had, I believe in our previous presentation when we were under our
Okay,
study
that's
session, it
not
was in
right.
error. But those other quantities, that's what's currently allowed for medical.
okay, just clarifying that
No, I
because
appreciate it.
Do you want to go back to that slide, Mario?
Yeah.
page 12.
Yeah. So just,
I just got.
This slide on the screen
Yeah.
is accurate.
Yeah, that was December 7th, yeah.
so this,
Okay.
this is the slide we're referring to.
Yeah, I had both of them in
No, I
front
know,
of me,
but
yeah.
Yeah,
this is
sorry.
also being viewed by the public at home, so I want to make sure everybody's clear.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's why I was trying to get clarification. I looked at the December 7th versus the current December 12th, and
Yep.
thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin Dodd?
I have a couple of questions. One on the stacking. Would there be language, or can we create language on the stacking to limit how many, permits that one organization or company could have?
Yes, you could put that in the licensing ordinance, because that's a quantity issue. So you could definitely limit, like, say, the quantity of A, quantity of B, quantity of C, and specifically put in the language, an applicant shall have, a licensed applicant through the city shall only have one type of license.
Okay.
Class
But with that
license.
one type of license, like a Class C, can we limit how many Class Cs they have?
Yes, like,
Okay.
once again, that would be a criteria of their license.
Okay.
In that only an applicant that has one Class C, an applicant shall only be permitted one Class C license within the city of Southfield.
Okay. I'm concerned about a monopoly. Okay? And it doesn't allow anyone else to, profit off of or have the opportunity to have a establishment. Second is, can can you have both medical and recreational under the same roof?
The state does allow that. It would be up to you if you would allow it. And I think, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, mainly because while the industry does seem to be moving completely away from medical, in theory, the reason we're all here is that back in 2008, the promulgation was that marijuana was good for medical purposes. While anyone 21 years and older now, if they feel they need it for medical purposes, they can just go to a retailer. People 21 years or 20 years old and younger can't. So in theory, if there's an individual that feels their need to have marijuana would treat their ailment, that's like a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old, it'd be nice that we still allowed that and still had a facility in which that would be serviced. It doesn't have to be very large, given the age bracket, but yes, it's something that, I don't see as a problem, mainly because also, going back to other questions, the characteristics from the city standpoint of these facilities isn't that different. Basically what it is that the barcodes that are placed on these plants that identify it as recreation or medical are just what's different. I don't see a lot of the other characteristics from a zoning standpoint that would be any different, whether it's a medical plant or a adult use plant.
Okay, and you talking, so for medical, you could be 20 and under and get a medical license?
Technically, the way the state statute is
Okay.
an individual that is assessed by a doctor
Okay,
is allowed to have it, so.
okay. That's all I have.
Commissioner
Through the
Benelli?
chair, before we move on, just a couple comments. There's a certain critical mass, especially at a large industrial facility of plants, to keep it operating, and I think some of the businesses that have done medical marijuana, they haven't had the ability to have enough plants to sustain themselves. And what we're concerned about is noise and smell and odors and all that. And if there's a facility that's large enough that could adequately handle 10,000 plants, and we prevent all those unnecessary nuisances, that might be a good thing to have one facility as opposed to them only being at 10% capacity. And I think about if we were to regulate how many hamburgers a fast food place could sell, or how many soft drinks, or you're hampering that business. So if we agree in principle that the business is good, and as long as it's regulated and licensed and it's in an appropriate location and they have the capacity, that's what we should be thinking about, as opposed to just saying we're only going to allow one Class A and one Class B license. So those are some considerations. Each case is going to be unique. Special land use is going to look at the size of the facility, the air handling, and all those other things, and that will then determine the amount of plants. And touring some of these facilities, you've got so many that are going to seed, so many that are being grown, and so many that are being processed, and that's a rotation basis. So that will also dictate the number of plants that a facility may or may not be able to handle.
Commissioner Benelli?
Thank you. My question is in reference to the recreational marijuana. I want to know if there is a limit for an individual who's 21 or over to purchase at any one time.
That is a very good question. I do know that in the state statute, you're only allowed to possess 2.5 ounces at any one time of marijuana, and then if you do have more on your person, 2.5 ounces. And so I imagine that would limit the amount of marijuana someone could purchase at an establishment. It doesn't limit the amount of times they could go back to that establishment, but I do know at one point, forgive me, I'm confused, I might be mixing my medical facilities statute with the recreational statute, but in a person's residence, they can have up to a certain number of ounces on their residence, provided it's in a locked, secure safe, basically. So they could have more than 2.5 ounces in their home, but on their person, they're only supposed to have 2.5 ounces.
Thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Willis?
Thank you. It's, I'm going to speak from my neighborhood as a neighborhood president. One of the things that my neighbors was concerned about is having a facility anyway, medical or just one for adult use. Do you know of any facility that used an inducement, like came into a neighborhood and say, hey, we'll help the city, neighborhood, we'll do something to benefit the neighborhood, community, anything of that nature?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't know of that ever happening. I do know that when it comes to the licensing statutes, licensing ordinances of the local municipalities, we highly advise not considering or requiring any type of monetary donation to the municipality, simply because that's just a slippery slope that could be misconstrued one way or the other. And so, we have to make sure that we treat this use just like any other use. That's the most defensible way of an approach to these type of uses. Now, having said that, I will say part of the aspects of the social equity program is to have, and this is what the state has created, and so working with the city attorney, we'll be evaluating what the state created, but they basically created a tier of qualifications, gold, silver, and bronze, for applicants. And if in order to get at each of those tiers, they have to do 1, 2, or 3 of different types of policies to create their own social equity process. And the first one is, the second one is a corporate spend plan. Now, it's not anything that I think should be explicitly written down as to quantity or what it is. It's more about giving the applicants the guidelines from the state and see what they approach a community with. So the first part of it, just around back to get to a bronze level, they're supposed to provide a social equity plan in general. Sometimes that deals with hiring practices. The state also qualifies certain people that as a individual that has been disadvantaged. The state has gone and they've determined that there are 184 Michigan communities which have been disproportionately impacted by marijuana prohibition and enforcement. And so individuals that live in those municipalities, those particular communities, have a certain status that either as part of an ownership group or as an employee could be part of a social equity plan. The second level is a silver to get those social equity and corporate spend plan, where they have specific terminologies about their approach. Say, for example, the subcontractors that an applicant utilizes. But, it's very specific because you have to, in order to make this work, because I've actually worked for the city of Chicago, and in order to make that work, they had to make sure that there's different licensing requirements. You can't just use terms to define this. To be an MBE or WBE, you have to, which is, excuse me, minority business enterprise or women's business enterprise in the city of Chicago, you need to be able to meet certain criteria. And so that's a separate process. Then you get on the official list, and then you're allowed to be a subcontractor. Similar thing with this. Finally, really briefly, there is a community reinvestment plan in order to be a gold level. It's just community reinvestment to do all three. And they're intended to detail the licensee's volunteer time or donation percentage of the revenue to organizations, nonprofits, and or charities which positively impact any of the groups in the identified categories. So once again, they can't be to just any group. The state identifies which groups have been disadvantaged, and the applicant would have to choose, craft a overall policy to do that. That's the only way it could happen. It's something that's new, and I'll be honest with you, so far the opinion of the social equity program at the state level isn't very high. I think that's probably because that social equity program, they go through all this, and then mainly what they do is then they discount your application fee at the state level.
Okay.
That's all they do.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you for that response.
We'll make sure that provide this information to you and to, of course, anyone that's interested.
Okay. And the last thing is, I think in our last meeting, we talked about the availability of a marijuana-derived product like a gummy bears and I believe, and I'm just wondering if I could impose on the city attorney, she has a, thank you so much.
So yes, when we were at the last meeting, there were questions about the marijuana-infused products, and I said I would get back to you about that. So there's the administrative rules also with the statute, and it addressed what a retailer, when they're selling those marijuana-infused products in their stores and what they're not able to do. But then I found something in color this afternoon that I thought might be helpful, and I can, if I may, through the chair, I can hand this to you all just to give you an example.
Thank you.
So, just to answer your question, Commissioner Willis, we were talking about the marijuana-infused products and how even though someone under 21 could not go into the retail establishments, there are still requirements that there's a special labels and packaging. And so when I saw this, I thought this would help to understand what the state imposes on those business owners of the adult use marijuana, such that even though someone under 21 cannot go in there and all the rules and regulations that goes with that, there's another step. And so I just wanted to provide that for you today. And it just shows, like, you see one picture that probably you would think maybe someone would be underage and look at this, but then there's a special label that says the marijuana gummies. And so this is just a quick summary as I'm talking to you in the interest of time, but there are administrative rules that also apply that state what they are not, they're prohibited as far as how they package their products. So again, they can't go into these establishments, anyone under 21. And of course, you know, there's going to be the security procedures that have to be established that will be reviewed when they apply for a license. So going through all of that, and then the state still says in the administrative rules what they're prohibited doing as far as their packaging, even though they're selling it to people 21 and older. So hopefully this will be informational for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Commissioners, are there any additional questions or comments?
I have a question.
Commissioner Martin?
We were mentioning before the tracking of marijuana plants, the products. Terry mentioned the barcoding of the plants. I assume the same is done for the medical as the adult use, that they still have to track the products.
That is correct. There, excuse me. That is correct. There's an online system where it's tracked from seed to sale and termination. So yeah, very, very elaborate and from what I've heard, very effective means of tracking everything.
So basically, the medical and the adult use would have the same quality and pureness.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioners, are there any additional questions or comments?
No.
I think that with the planning department, the city attorney's office, the state regulations, and all of those parameters, I think moving forward, we have a good benchmark to move forward with. So given that, is there a call for recommendations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a recommendation this evening. The planning department does make a favorable, here we go. The planning department does make a favorable recommendation of the draft dated December 14th, 2022 for the following reasons. Proposed text amendment will amend Title V, Zoning and Planning, Chapter 45, Zoning of the Code of the City of Southfield by adding to Article 2 definitions, Section 5.3, a definition of adult use marijuana, amending Article 4 general requirements, Section 5.22-7, medical marijuana facilities, to remove the Northland ODD as a location for all medical marijuana facilities, adding to Article 4 general requirements, a new Section 5.22-8, adult use recreational marijuana facilities to allow for adult use of marijuana in the city subject to certain conditions and requirements, amending Article 9, Office Service Section 5.103, and Article 10, Education Research Office Limited, Education Research Office, Section 5.112, to allow medical marijuana and adult use marijuana safety compliance facilities as permitted uses, amending Section 18, Article 18, excuse me, General Business, Section 5.169, to allow adult use marijuana retailers as special land uses, amending Article 19, Light Industrial Section 5.179, to remove previous language regarding medical marijuana, adding new standards for marijuana uses, updating medical marijuana uses, and allowing adult use marijuana as a special use, and amending Article 20, Industrial Section 5.185, to add adult use marijuana as a special land use, and any other amendments that may become necessary as needed for the above and the City of Southfield, including deleting Section 5.60-E that currently prohibits adult use in Southfield. Thank you.
Commissioners, is there a motion?
To the chair, recommend favorable approval of PZTA 22-0004.
Support?
It's been moved by Commissioner Martin and supported by Commissioner Huntington that we accept the favorable recommendation of PZTA 22-0004. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That we accept PZTA 22-0004.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Spence, is there, we're moving on to the next item, PSLU 22-0004, in addition to
Be PSP 22-0008. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
PSP-0008.
Yep. So this is a special use and site plan review request of Ashaka Investment Properties LLC for property located at 24040 West 10 Mile Road, and we're on the north side of West 10 Mile between Telegraph and Bird Road. Property is currently zoned B3 General Business And the special use request before you is to allow for general office use, and the site plan review request for the conversion of the existing dry cleaner to a general office type use. This particular image gives you an indication of the property in question. The property owner actually not only owns the property that's in red here, but also owns the restaurant property directly on the corner of Berg Road and 10 Mile Road. This gives you an indication of current site conditions. It is a rather small building on a very narrow piece of property and mostly surrounded by asphalt and concrete. As I noted, property is Zone B3 General Business, and from a future land use plan is part of the Technology Corridor sub-area. This is the proposed site plan for the property. The total number of parking spaces required is 11. He can put 6 parking spaces on site. He'll have 4 parking spaces along the north property line, 2 parking spaces in the frontage. One would be a barrier-free space with van accessibility. The other 4 spaces would be on the adjacent property, the restaurant property that the petitioner, the owner, owns. That would be accessible through a cross-access and parking agreement. That would be a condition of approval should the Planning Commission move this forward. The petitioner is also providing landscaping on the property where we don't have any, basically along the east property line and then along a little bit along 10 Mile Road. The bike rack is also required, as well as a required pedestrian connection. The image on the right kind of gives you a little better look. I know a black and white image can be a little bit more difficult to discern what's what. So the kind of the tan color is the building. The green areas would be considered landscaping. With that, the petitioner is here this evening, I believe. And if he is, he can come forward, and I don't see the petitioner here, Madam Chair.
Through the chair, I know there was some urgency with his tenant to open his tax office, and since they were here last week, I would just recommend we hold the public hearing now. You can make a recommendation, and we can follow up with him prior to council.
Okay, given that, I'd like to open the public hearing for PSLU 22-0004. If there's anyone here that'd like to share comments for PSLU 22-0004. Public hearing for PSLU 22-0004. Given none, I close the public hearing for PSLU 22-0004. Commissioner Bernuti.
I had a question before, and I think someone else raised it, about the large sign that's there in front of the building. Will that be removed?
If I could, through the chair, typically, if it's a non-conforming sign, it can stay. They can put a new sign within the frame, and most businesses are reluctant if they have a larger sign than what is currently permitted in the ordinance to have it removed. I believe his intent is just to use the sign frame that's currently there.
Thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Goodwin-Guy.
I have nothing.
Commissioner Martin.
At present, there are stanchions or blocks across the back of the building so that parking, the way he has it diagrammed, is to go in from the front and across the back to exit. Right now, that's blocked, and I want to make sure that we're aware that whatever is there blocking the parking access from this building to the other building he owns and to exit, it stays clear. He has the parking stanchions there that are blocking through the driveway through, and that needs to be kept clear at all times so traffic can egress through there. That's all.
Commissioner Willis?
No questions.
Commissioner Griffiths?
I think these two buildings, adjacent buildings, only worked together when they could share the drives through. It's only appropriate, since they've made the connections and the proper legal agreements, to document that and allow the site to proceed with this approved site plan, which I think is a nice improvement. It's also important to keep these kind of buildings and allow them to exist in the city. You couldn't build this today, but it exists. It's pretty interesting. It's part of the history. They're having to jump through a lot of hoops to get this approval to become a tax office. I'm pretty sure the tenant didn't know what they were signing up for before they agreed to lease this building. That's not, that's a process that needs to be improved for people seeking to open a business, but I think this functions as, it's a good building. It can work as long as the site flows this way that they've proposed it, and I'm in favor of approving this project and moving forward.
Commissioner Huntington?
Yeah, I have no issue with this building being used as a special use, this business.
Are there any other questions or comments, commissioners? Given that, I think that it's an excellent. Oh, Commissioner Planner Crowe?
Yeah, I just want to mention, and this was brought up last week, compliance with the barrier-free ADA from the property to the east will be part and parcel of our recommendations for approval.
I think that this is I agree with Commissioner Griffiths that this is almost an historical building, and it's good to see that there is still some interest in it. And I'm glad that the commissioners are willing to move forward with this, given that the petitioner is not here tonight, so I think that's wonderful. Is there a recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PSLU 22-0004, the Planning Department does recommend favorable recommendation of the special use request of Ashaka Investment Properties LLC to allow for general office use on the property located at 24040 West 10 Mile Road, Civil Parcel 2420477-017, north side of 10 Mile Road between Telegraph and Berg Road, Section 20 of the City of Southfield, for the following reasons. Subject to review and approval of a cross-access and parking agreement by the city attorney and recording of the same by the petitioner for the use of 4 parking spaces and drive access across the property located at 24030 West 10 Mile. Subject to submittal of a Phase 1 environmental report since the site was previously used as a laundromat. Owner of the restaurant property located at 24030 West 10 Mile Road is to work with the Planning Department in providing an access aisle from the barrier-free spaces to the main entry of the building and provide for landscape screening of parking areas. Proposed uses of such size and character that will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the general business district. Location, size, intensity, periods of operation of the proposed use is designed to eliminate any possible nuisance likely to emanate therefrom, which might be adverse to occupants of any other nearby permitted use. Proposed use is in accord with the spirit and purpose of this chapter and is not inconsistent with nor contrary to the objectives sought to be accomplished by this chapter and the principles of sound planning. Proposed uses of such character and vehicular traffic generated will not have an adverse effect or be detrimental to the surrounding land uses or adjacent thoroughfare. Proposed uses of such character and intensity and arranged on the site so as to eliminate any adverse effects resulting from noise, dust, dirt, glare, odor, or fumes. Proposed use or change of use will not be adverse to the promotion of the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And then proposed use or change of use is designed and operated so as to provide security and safety to employees and the general public. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion?
Question? Is that recommendation for both PSLU 22-004 and PSLU 22-008?
Which recommendation?
You just read.
No, we have to do these separately because the
Okay.
special land use is different from the site plan.
Okay,
So yes.
fair enough. Okay.
Is there a motion for PSLU 22-0004?
Through the chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a favorable recommendation for PSLU 22-0004.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Huntington and second by Commissioner Willis that we accept a favorable recommendation for PSLU 22-0004. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries that we accept PSLU 22-0004. Is there a motion to accept PSP 22-0008?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PSP 22-0008, the Planning Department does recommend favorable recommendation of the site plan review request for Shaka Investment Properties LLC to convert the vacant dry cleaner to a tax preparation office, property located 24040 West 10 Mile Road, the north side of West 10 Mile between Telegraph and Berg Road, Section 20, City of Southfield, for the following reasons and conditions. It's subject to the conditions of PSLU 22-0004. Site is to be developed in accordance with SP 1 by Bearing Construction and Consulting, dated 11/21/22. Landscape and irrigation shall be installed in accordance with sheet LS-1 by Felino A. Pascal and Associates, dated 11/30/22. Approval of this site plan and/or building elevations represented herein does not constitute nor guarantee approval for signage. Separate approval and sign permits must be obtained from the building department for any proposed sign. Petitioners provide a sprinkler system for all landscape areas to encourage preservation of plant material. Petitioners will execute a perpetual maintenance agreement for the landscape and parking areas both on site and in the right-of-way, which concludes the maintenance of any stormwater detention system. Petitioner is to implement the recommendations made by the Southfield Police Department's Crime Prevention Bureau regarding site security. Exterior lighting will be shielded to prevent spillage of glare onto adjacent properties, and bike racks shall be installed in accordance with Article 4, Section 5.29, Paragraph 12. Thank you.
Through the chair, Mr. Spence, I don't recall you mentioning the barrier-free.
If I may, because I noted conditions of PSLU 22-0004.
Okay, so you're
Since
just
it's in the
referring- you're just
PSLU,
referring
yeah,
to it.
automatically
Okay.
it becomes part of
I
the
just want to
site
make sure
plan.
we're covered on this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioners, is there a motion?
To the chair, recommend favorable approval of PSP 2022-0008.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Martin and second by Commissioner Huntington that we accept PSP 22-0008. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We accept PSP 22-0008. Mr. Spence, we're looking at PSLU 22-0005.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this particular proposal, we actually have a special land use and a site plan similar to the item that we just concluded. This is PSLU 22-0005 and PSP 22-0009, petitioner Nicholas Shango. The parcel is 2418-276-043, and the property located 28799 Northwestern Highway, south side of Northwestern Highway between Franklin and West 12 Mile Road. The existing zoning is B3 general business. The special use request is to allow for a restaurant with a drive-through, and the site plan review request is for the demolition of a portion of the existing building and a conversion to a 3,334 gross square foot retail center with a restaurant with a drive-through. This kind of gives you an indication of the property location. This is a little bit closer view. You can see the existing building is basically right up against what would be the northwest property line, and that's the portion of the building that would end up being removed and demoed. Existing conditions of the building, both from Northwestern Highway, which is the top image. The bottom image is the view from Franklin Road. So it's going to be critical that, because Franklin Road is also frontage, that we also take special care to improve that side of the building as well. Zoning, as I noted, is B3 general business with regional mixed use for future land use. This is the demo plan, and as I noted, a portion of the building would be removed, as well as some of the landscaping up front. And then this would be the site plan that would be proposed. Again, be looking at a over 3,000 square foot new building with a drive-through. Access would be from Northwestern Highway for the drive-through, with a drive-through window on the Franklin Road side. He is providing pedestrian connections, new landscaping, outdoor seating as well, and bike racks would also be required as part of this review and approval. So a little bit closer view of the proposal. It's a view of the interior of the proposal with the floor plan. Specifically, he is looking at what is called a clean juice location. That would be the space that is on the left-hand side of the floor plan. And this is kind of an image of the interior of a clean juice location. Not necessarily that this one would be in this type of format or these types of materials, but this at least gives you an example of what the inside could look like. Exterior of the building. And with that, Mr. Shango is here this evening to present his case. I will note that there were concerns about, I know that Commissioner Martin had brought up about the grease dumpster that is currently on the property. Mr. Shango will address that this evening, so we can let you know what's going to happen with that particular item.
Good evening. Nick Shango, 28799 Northwestern Highway. Are there any questions I can answer for you today?
Can you just give us a little background about what it is you plan to do?
So it's, we have right now, it's probably going to be us, Domino's, and a burger QSR. So we're gonna cut the building, create a drive-through. We have one extra car stack. It's going to be a contemporary design. I'm going to build a band around the front, paint the building charcoal, and we addressed the comments that the planning had from the previous. I was here last month. So the back of the building, I have several options. I might do paneling. I might do powder-coated aluminum bars. I might do a mural. So I gave all three options, but I'm not going to just leave it black. We're going to paint the block, but we're going to cover it. We also want to take down that fence, but I can hit the ground running when I get the approval then I can go take down the fence, get rid of this nuisance of this grease and this garbage can area, because that's going to all go away anyways. And I apologize for that. We haven't been on the property. We just bought it, and I've been working on this, and I just don't have a crew down there yet. But when we go down there to demo, when we gut the inside, clean up the outside, whatever needs a repair, we're going to repair. We'll check the sewer. We can vector it. So I haven't looked at anything yet. But just know that I will take care of it. I own the property next door. So we also cut that building, and we created the drive-through, and we did the office. And so I want to add too that the end cap, Jeff, we might not do the end cap. We might be the other end cap, depending on. We have a guy that he's. Have you heard of 1011 Burger? He's a homemade burger and fries, and he also has Jimmy John's. So Domino's would go in the middle. We would either be at the drive-through or at the other side. we haven't finalized yet. And, you know, our concept is organic, everything's organic. It's a juice bar with healthy eats. Also, a contemporary design. And, you know, we're gonna redo the landscape, redo, you know, parking lot, striping. We're gonna get rid of the bollards. You know, like I said, we own next door, so I want it to blend in. There's a little ponding by that sewer there always. I have to see what's going on there. Maybe something's broken, maybe something's stuck, I don't know. So,
Thank you. Commissioner Crowe?
Yeah,
Director Crowe.
that's okay. Nick, so if I understand you, right now, you're planning on being the end cap with the drive-through, but that you could switch to the other end and the burger might take the drive-through, but
Correct.
you're only gonna have one drive-through.
correct, only one, no.
Yeah,
only one.
I just wanna make sure
Yeah.
that's clear.
I don't want to lie, unless I'm 100% sure, you know, we're like 95% sure. So, no, there's only going to be one drive-through.
And right now,
It might not be us.
you're proposing to have 3 tenants in
Correct,
this
that's
new-
it, that's it.
I'm good, I just wanna make sure we're all clear.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for PSLU 22-0005. All interested parties that have comments, please approach the podium. Public hearing for PSLU 22-0005. Public hearing for PSLU-22-0005. Given none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioner Huntington.
I think this is a good special use request. It's a unique business that I think the city of Southfield residents will appreciate. And that area looks kind of outdated right now, so I think renovating that area is going to make a big, big difference in that area. So I'm in favor of it.
Commissioner Griffith.
I think this is really interesting because you already did this with the building next door. You cut a lot of building out, created a drive-through. It's worked well. There's another building that's jammed right to the property lines that you're gonna reduce the size of to breathe new life into it. I think that's smart and interesting. Obviously, you've done it once and it's working well for you. You know it's gonna work here. And this is like going on 10 projects in this area of Northwestern Highway that we reviewed on this commission in the last year and a half, 2 years. So it must be something special in that area. It's good to see the continuation of it. It's obviously a popular spot to be. I think it's a fitting project. I do appreciate what you've done to the outside of the building. You gotta do something to the rear of the building or the Franklin Road side. There isn't truly a rear. It sounds like you've got a couple things in the works. There's been several other outlet type strip center buildings, specifically very near this area, that have done some pretty good examples of what you can do to continue the design all the way around the building. So as long as that's part of the stipulation, I understand he's trying to negotiate tenants and see how it's all gonna work out, but as long as something's done to the back that's matching with the other 3 sides of the building, I think it's gonna look nice. I think it's a good use. And I think there's some weird shaped sites, obviously along Northwestern Highway, triangles and different property lines that are kind of tough to redevelop. So going the opposite direction and introducing more greenery and reducing the size of the buildings, it's good for everybody, I think.
I just want to say, at the back, I'm going to show Jeff before I do anything and get a approval, but I have 3, 4 ideas what we can do back there, but, you know, we did it at the office building. We put landscape, we put daylilies. We continue design on 4 sides. So that building, I stoned all 4 perimeters. Even the little side that faces this side, that's also, I'm going to put a tree there. Jinko probably put some daylilies there, so now the back entrance will be nice too. And then we're going to paint the wall to match the building, but.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, petitioner is also aware of the art requirement. I believe at the last meeting, we had or at least had a conversation about maybe a mural or something on the back. So I do believe that's one of the things that he's also looking at.
Commissioner Willis?
Thank you. I think you said a couple of times you own the building next door. You're not talking about one of the 3 units here, you're talking about the one on the other side of?
Yeah, the one that has the Dunkin' Donuts. So I used to own that for many years, and I sold it. The property is still mine. So I'm very familiar with the traffic, with the people, with the customers, with the neighborhood. And the whole scheme is, you know, how many cars come in. It's a low volume business. It's not like Dunkin'. You know, they're gonna close at 8 p.m. It's for the healthy eater. There's nothing like it in your city. You don't have it because there's only 5 in Michigan.
Okay.
So it's like a Beyond Juice, but we're certified organic everything. Everything that they sell is organic, but similar to Beyond Juice, it's healthy, you know, smoothies and sandwiches.
I look forward to when it opened, but that is my next question. Assuming favorable approval, when do you think you'll start and finish?
Quarter one. I'll start in January, because my office is next door. I walk there every day.
Okay.
I'll start breaking the building. We can be quarter one. Before April, we'll be done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
I have a question about your drive-through. Leave it to me to be the troublemaker. In the back through your drive-through, currently you have it basically going straight. There's a power center there that juts out. You don't have that indicated in your diagrams and that, so I assume that you're just gonna go around it?
No, I gotta know, there's an island straight ahead, that little green island. I have the transformer being relocated.
Okay,
So we're
yeah.
gonna put the transformer there, put bollards in front of it, and you'll have a 1-foot curb at the back of the building. So it'll be completely
Matching what's
safe.
there then?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm gonna pick it up, move. It's actually not that bad of a price to do that.
Yeah, and basically that was the thing, only because you didn't have the bump out indicated
Correct.
in the drive-through, so.
Because I couldn't do it
Yeah.
yet, I couldn't go around
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And you're talking about actually demolishing the tenant on that end,
So, yeah.
so that you have the room for the drive-through and all of that?
Yeah, so do you remember the guy who used to make a Jamaican chicken?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're gonna cut that piece off, and then that gives us, I think it's about 800 or 900 square feet. It gives me just enough to clear my 20-foot driveway. So it's tight, but I think I got a foot cushion there.
And you do have the ordering booth?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have the order board. Yeah,
On the
we have
side, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
So-
I have it facing the neighbor, not facing the street. So that's the farthest I could put it without it looking at the street.
Yeah, and that's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin Dye?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your final product, but I do want to put in my vote for a mural. I think that would be amazing. It would be different. It would be eye-catching, and I'm sure that the neighbors would appreciate it as well.
If you know what, I want to do it too, because I haven't done it, you know, I don't want doing the same projects all the time. I do a lot of projects. I'm an architect. If you guys could give me some contacts of artists, because
See me.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you give me some example, I know Jeff sent me a few. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm all for it, you know. I'm not against it. I could throw some lights on it, so I just wrote the other stuff just in case I don't do that, and I don't have to come back to the commission. I gave you guys three or four options. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Venuti?
Thank you. I'm really excited as well. It's going to be a really good asset for Southfield, the organic especially. Will there be online ordering?
There
And
is.
how will that be handled
So
as far
online-
as the drive-through is
Yeah,
concerned?
so online is, I was talking about it last time I came. I just did a Dave's Hot Chicken. They don't use a drive-through anymore. They use a mobile order pickup lane. So if we occupy the drive-through, it's gonna be, usually people pay ahead, which is good. Then there's no delay. You just hand their food and they go. So we have extra spaces. We're gonna use that for staging the mobile orders or overflow traffic for the drive-through. We have 15 extra spaces. So But that's where everything's trending. People order on their phone, they pay for it, they come there and pick it up. Usually people who leave the gym. So you have a Franklin right down the street. A lot of business owners take lodge. People work at the hospital, the locals. The locals come a lot too. They come walk from the neighborhood. So, they'll come in. It's not a high volume traffic. You get 80, 90 customers a day. It's a high ticket. It's like $10 to $12 for a drink, because it's organic. They have kale and things of that nature. So usually when a couple comes, 2 or 3 people, it's $20, $25. So I'm used to fast food. In Dunkin', I would get 600 customers a day, and I would have to push them out within 2 minutes. So everything is trending towards the mobile order anyways. This drive-through order is a thing of the past now. People pay online, mobile order, pick up, and they have a little spot inside where you pick up your order. So we want them to do that. It relieves traffic and it speeds up the site. We don't want to get it, clogged up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair. Nick, you just said that you had 15 extra spaces?
I think something.
Well, I didn't check the math, but we have a limit of, you can't have more than 20% of your required amount, because we're trying to reduce impervious surface. So we'll need to check that. And if you want to designate some of those spaces for the pickup, that's fine.
Okay.
But we're trying to reduce impervious surface, so we have a max cap. So if you had 10 spaces required, you could have 12 spaces. That would be 20%. If you have 20 spaces, it'd be 24. So we'll just need to get that worked out before it goes to council.
No problem.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, when the plan originally came in, those other areas are going to be retail, and then we were just going to have the one restaurant with the drive-through. So you might think that you had more spaces. When you figure the parking based on 3 restaurant uses, you have 34 spaces required, 37 on site. So they're actually okay with their parking. They're not over.
Well, Nick, I will say that your enthusiasm is contagious, and we missed you last week because we needed your enthusiasm. Is there a recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PSLU 22-0005, Planning Department recommends favorable recommendation of the special use request of Nicholas Shango to allow for a restaurant with drive-through on the property located at 28799 Northwestern Highway, suitable parcel 2418276.043 on the south side of Northwestern Highway between Franklin and 12 Mile Road. For the following conditions: hours of operation shall be limited to 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Sunday. And let me make a clarification on that, because I know that Mr. Shango had said 8 o'clock, but he also, earlier, he had sent me in some information on the pizza place might be open later. So thus the reason why 11 o'clock is being noted on here, because that's what he had noted to me in an email earlier. So again, we're looking at potential hours of operation be limited to 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Sunday. The existing grease dumpster shall be cleaned and removed from the site. Proposed use is of such size and character that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the general business district. The location, size, intensity, and periods of operation of the proposed use is designed to eliminate any possible nuisance likely to emanate therefrom, which might be adverse to occupants of any other permitted use. Proposed use is in accord in the spirit and purpose of this chapter and is not inconsistent with or contrary to the objectives sought to be accomplished by this chapter, the principles of sound planning. Proposed uses of such character and the vehicular traffic generated will not have an adverse effect or be detrimental to the surrounding land uses or the adjacent thoroughfare. Proposed uses of such character and intensity of use and arranged on the site so as to eliminate any adverse effects resulting from noise, dust, dirt, glare, odor, or fumes. Proposed use or change of use will not be adverse to the promotion of the health, safety, and welfare of the community, and the proposed use or change of use is designed and operated so as to provide security and safety to the employees and the general public. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, is there a motion? Commissioner Bernuti?
I'd like to make a motion on PSLU 22-0005.
I support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernuti and second by Commissioner Griffiths that we accept the favorable recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We accept the favorable recommendation for PSLU 22-0005. Is there a recommendation for PSP 22-0009?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PSP 22-0009, the Planning Department does recommend favorable recommendation of the site plan review request of Nicholas Shango to convert the vacant retail center to a restaurant with drive-through and 2 additional tenant spaces, property located at 28799 Northwestern Highway, the south side of Northwestern Highway between Franklin and 12 Mile Road, Section 18 of the city, for the following reasons and conditions. They're subject to the conditions of PSLU 22-0005. The site shall be developed in accordance with sheet T-1 dated September 30th, 2022, and sheet SP-5 dated June 18th, 2022 by Zayed El Baba Engineering. Elevations of the building shall be constructed in accordance with sheet A-2 dated October 13th, 2022 by Zayed El Baba Engineering. Landscaping and irrigation shall be installed in accordance with sheet L-1 dated March 2nd, 2022 by Zayed El Baba Engineering. Petitioners provide a sprinkler system for all landscape areas to encourage preservation of plant material. Petitioners execute a perpetual maintenance agreement for landscape and parking areas both on site and in the right-of-way, which includes maintenance of any stormwater detention system. Petitioners implement the recommendations made by the Southfield Police Department's Crime Prevention Bureau regarding site security. Approval of this site plan and/or building elevations represented herein does not constitute nor guarantee approval for signage. Separate approval and sign permits must be obtained from the building department for any proposed sign. Exterior lighting will be shielded to prevent spillage of glare into adjacent properties. Bike racks shall be installed in accordance with Article 4, Section 5.29, Paragraph 12, and the site shall be designed and developed to contain public works of art in accordance with Section 5.22-5, Public Art, Article 4, General Requirements of the zoning ordinance. Thank you.
Is there a motion, Commissioner?
I move a favorable consideration for PSP 22-0009.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Willis and second by Commissioner Huntington that we accept the favorable recommendation of PSP 22-0009. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We accept PSP 22-009.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to have information regarding PZR 22-0002, PSLU 22-0006, and PSP 22-0010.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an existing property on 8 Mile Road, was a former Taco Bell location. The petitioner is Savvy Sliders. Property located at 22650 West 8 Mile Road on the north side of 8 Mile between Berg and Lasser Road. The existing zoning of the property is I-1 Industrial with a request to rezone the property to B3 General Business. And let me note here that at the time that the Taco Bell was actually constructed, industrial zones allowed for fast food type restaurants within the industrial zone district. A few years ago, restaurants, especially on 8 Mile, were removed from the industrial zone. So the petitioner needed to rezone the property to a zoning district that will allow for the type of use to continue. Note that this particular location has been closed for a number of years now, so we basically had to go through the entire process all over again. So again, the rezoning request is to B3 General Business. The special use request is to allow a restaurant with a drive-through in the B3, And the site plan review request is for the conversion of the existing buildings to a Savvy Sliders. This is a close-up look of the existing building. Existing conditions, and both of these were taken from 8 Mile Road. As I noted, the existing zoning is I-1 industrial with a proposed zoning to B3 general business, and the property itself, from a future land use standpoint, is for regional mixed use. This is the proposed site plan for the property, and the petitioner has done a number of things to the site to bring it up into accordance with our current zoning ordinance, the pedestrian connection, bike racks. He also increased the dimension, the width of the drive-through area to provide for the pass-through lane, or the escape lane sometimes is what it's called, should someone need to leave the drive-through after actually being in the drive-through. They're also looking at some brand-new landscaping on site, and I know it was mentioned last week, especially about the existing pole sign, with a lot of the plant material that's currently around that, basically overgrown. The petitioner had noted that there will be some removal of plant material there to at least allow that signage now to be visible once again. The image on the right kind of gives you a little bit better indication, look of how the property is being used, with the building, the landscaping in green, and obviously the paving areas in gray. Floor plan for the site. And as I noted, there's brand new landscaping that's being proposed throughout the property. Elevations, and I know there are some questions with regard to the elevations that were part of the package. The petitioner has provided the planning department with 3 sites that are currently within Michigan. We have a site in Nokomis, a site in Troy, and a site in Farmington Hills. So these are what those particular buildings look like. So we can anticipate, and he can confirm, that this particular building will look somewhat like what the images are shown on the current screen. The other 2 images are, again, a look at what the potential inside of a Savvy Sliders currently looks like. With that, you do have to have at least 2 public hearings on this, one for the rezoning request, one for the special land use request, and then you can move to the site plan. With that, Mr. Kerma is here this evening to present his case to you and then answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. I think Mr. Spencer did a wonderful job in explaining the project. We're looking to be able to use this property as it was originally built and intended for. I believe the Taco Bell was built in 1996. Unfortunately, the change in the ordinance doesn't allow for a restaurant with a drive-through. So we're asking to be able to use the property as it was originally designed and intended for, along with doing the upgrades that we need for the pass-through lane, the additional landscaping, irrigation, as well as the improvements to the exterior of the building to bring it up and make it a little more aesthetically pleasing. So with that, I'm asking for approval, I guess.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, just one other item that was brought up at last week's meeting had to do with a cross-access agreement with Sam's Club. In the Taco Bell file, we did actually have an executed cross-access and parking agreement with Sam's Club, so the driveway that is on the northern portion is completely legal for cross-through traffic.
And also, there was a question regarding the curb cut at 8 Mile with the Michigan left. Contacted MDOT. The engineer hasn't got back to me, but the initial conversation we had was that if there's no changes to the curb cut happening, there is nothing that we need to really do with MDOT, but I'm going to confirm with that.
I'd like to open the public hearing for PZR 22-0002. Public hearing for PZR 22-0002. Public hearing for PZR 22-0002. I'm closing the public hearing for PZR 22-0002. I'd like to open the public hearing for PSL.
Recommendation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a recommendation?
Well, I guess I would first petition the commissioners themselves if they have any questions on the rezoning request.
Okay. Commissioner Huntington.
I think this rezoning request meets all the zoning standards, and this business does fit in with the surrounding businesses, so I think the rezoning is okay for this area.
Commissioner Griffiths.
Same, it checks the box, it's greater than 1 acre, if it's not like the like zonings around it. And I think it makes sense to have something besides just industrial on 8 Mile. I don't consider 8 Mile to be a true industrial district, but it's what we have in this city. So I think the rezoning makes sense for this project.
Commissioner Willis.
I have to agree with prior commissioners. I think it checks all of the boxes. It's an attractive facade, so I look forward to opening. And my question is always, assuming approval, how long before you will have the doors open?
We're looking to have plans in for building permits, hopefully mid-January. And our current build-out time is about 60 to 90 days, depending on availability of the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Martin.
How come you didn't show a diagram of the facility on Telegraph in Redford? Never mind.
Because that was still in construction.
Yeah. I think it's an excellent idea, and hopefully everything will fall in line.
Great.
Commissioner Goodwin Dye.
I'm in agreement with my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Venuti.
And I as well. I just wanted to know about the tree that's back there in the back. Will that be removed?
I'm sorry, which tree?
Yeah, there's a tree that was obstructing as you go around the drive-through. It's, well, unless you moved it since I was last on 8 Mile.
Commissioner, he said it was
Has it
going to be
been
removed.
removed?
Yeah, he said it was going to be removed at
Oh,
the
good.
prior
You don't
meeting.
have to look
Yeah,
for it. It's been
dead.
removed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple of trees back there that are
Yeah.
being removed and being
Yeah.
replaced with new.
Thank you. It's an excellent idea, and the building,
Yeah,
it looks like it's ready to be opened almost.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Thank you. We look
And
forward
the
to it.
overgrown trees at the current pole sign, those really aren't trees, they're invasive weeds that have grown up. So those are coming down, and all the landscaping around there will be cleaned up. All the trees that are overgrown will be pruned, and so the canopies all will look really nice.
Good.
Are there any additional questions, Commissioner? Is there a recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PZR 22-0002, the Planning Department does recommend favorable recommendation to rezone 1.077 acres of land from from industrial, I-1 industrial, to B3 general business for the following reasons. Southfield Comprehensive Master Plan indicates regional mixed use for this property. Change in zoning would be compatible with or similar to existing adjacent zonings and land uses. Proposal is in accordance with the standards for rezoning of the property.
Commissioners, is there a motion?
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion for favorable consideration for PZR 22-0002.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Huntington, second by Commissioner Willis, that we accept the favorable recommendation for PZR 22-0002. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We accept PZR 22-0002. Is there a recommendation for PSLU 22-0006?
Yes, if the Planning Commission is ready for that.
I have one question.
Okay. Commissioner Griffiths.
I see the examples of the other Savvy sliders. I see what appears to be about a half-finished rendering. It doesn't look like it has windows or a ground, so I'm a little confused, and I'm assuming, or I'm asking, I guess, it looks like you have a clay tile roof that's kind of reddish, orangish. Looks like that's to remain, and everything else gets a gray or a black tone paint to match. Is that
The
correct?
examples of the pictures that were submitted are, one, the Farmington Hills location was a McDonald's. No work on the facade was done, it was strictly all just repainting. The one in Troy was a Starbucks, again, same thing, no work on the facade, just repainting. And the Okemos location was a Tim Hortons. Again, no work on the facade, it was just painting, which really transforms the building significantly. And we think that the colors that are selected in the paint color and schemes that you see in those buildings will be identical to what's going to be on the Taco Bell,
Okay. I think that's going to be a
or
nice
the old Taco
improvement.
Bell.
That was the ugly Starbucks, I remember that one. It looks a lot better as a Savvy Sliders. Thank you.
Tastes better too.
Commissioner Rhodes?
No, I have no question. Thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Commissioner Bernoulli? No question. Commissioner Goodwin-Guy? Is there a recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PSLU 22-0006, the Planning Department does recommend favorable recommendation of the rezoning request of Savvy Sliders to allow for a restaurant with drive-through. Just hold on for a second. Yep. Special use request of Savvy Sliders to allow for a restaurant with drive-through, property located at 22650 West 8 Mile Road, Sidwell parcel 2433452028, the north side of West 8 Mile Road between Lasser Road and Berg Road for the following reasons. Hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to midnight Friday and Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Sunday. Proposed uses of such size and character that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the B3 General Business District, location, size, intensity, periods of operation of the proposed use, designed to eliminate any possible nuisance likely to emanate therefrom, which might be adverse to occupants of any other nearby permitted use. The proposed use is in accord with the spirit and purpose of this chapter and will not be inconsistent with or contrary to the objectives sought to be accomplished by this chapter and principles of sound planning. Proposed uses of such character and the vehicular traffic generated will not have adverse effect or be detrimental to the surrounding land uses or the adjacent thoroughfares. Proposed uses of such character and intensity arranged on the site so as to eliminate any adverse results resulting from noise, dust, dirt, glare, odor, or fumes. Proposed use or change of use will not be adverse to the promotion of the health, safety, and welfare of the community, and the proposed use or change of use is designed and operated so as to provide security and safety for both employees and the general public. Thank you.
Commissioners, is there a motion?
I would move for special, for consideration, favorable consideration of PSLU 22-0006.
Support.
I knew I'd get that out.
It's been moved by Commissioner Willis and seconded by Commissioner Huntington that we accept the favorable recommendation of PSLU 22-0006. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. We accept the favorable recommendation of PSLU 22-0006. Commissioners, is there any discussion regarding PSP 22-0010? Commissioner Griffiths.
I think this is a good example of a not that old of a drive-through that doesn't meet the current rules that we have in the city, and they've agreed to make the improvements so that we can stay consistent with the way we've been reviewing drive-throughs and improving landscaping and providing this escape lane and pedestrian connection. So they've done it the right way. They've agreed to update what is not that outdated of a building. And I thank you for that, so I will be in favor of this project.
Commissioner Huntington.
I think this is a good site for this business, and with the improvements in landscaping and what have you, I think it's going to be a nice business.
Commissioner Willis.
I too am in favor. Good luck with it. Thank you.
Commissioner Martin.
I'm in favor also, thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin-Dye. Commissioner Bernoulli.
In favor as well.
It's unanimous. I'm in favor too. Is there a recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PSP 22-0010, Planning Department recommends favorable recommendation of the site plan review request of Savvy Sliders to convert the vacant restaurant with drive-through to a new Savvy Sliders restaurant with drive-through Property located at 22650 West 8 Mile Road, on the north side of West 8 Mile Road between Losser and Berg Road, Section 33, for the following reasons. Subject to the conditions of PSLU 22-0006. Site shall be developed in accordance with sheet SP1 dated 12/1/22 by Bearing Construction and Consulting. Elevations of the proposed Southfield location shall match the existing Savvy Slider buildings as depicted in the examples provided with the color scheme shown and in materials acceptable to the city. Drawings shall be provided to the Planning Department prior to this item proceeding to City Council. Landscaping and irrigation shall be installed in accordance with sheet L1 through L3 dated November 2nd, 2022 by Allen Design. Petitioners provide a sprinkler system for all landscape areas to encourage preservation of plant material. Petitioners who execute a perpetual maintenance agreement for the landscape and parking areas both on site and in the right-of-way, which includes maintenance of any stormwater detention system. Petitioners who implement the recommendations made by the Southfield Police Department's Crime Prevention Bureau regarding site security. Approval of the site plan and/or building elevations represented herein does not constitute nor guarantee approval for signage. Separate approval and sign permits must be obtained from the building department for any proposed sign. Exterior lighting will be shielded, prevent spillage of glare onto adjacent properties, and bike racks shall be installed in accordance with Article 4, Section 5.29, Paragraph 12. Thank you.
Commissioners, is there a motion?
I'd make a motion.
Planner Crowell?
Before, if you wouldn't mind, before you make the motion, just have two clarifications. I might have missed it. Do you have a cross-access agreement with Sam's Club?
Yes.
And is your project, total project cost over $1 million?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bernuti?
I'd like to make the motion on PSP 22-0010.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernuti and supported by Commissioner Huntington that we accept a favorable recommendation for PSP 22-0010. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We accept PSP 22-0010. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are-
This isn't part of it.
all right, we are at Mr. Spence, we're now at the plans for PCVR 22-0001 and PSLU 22-0007. And where's my other one? PSP 22-0011.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, we do have three separate items related to this property. PZR 22-0001 is a conditional rezoning of the property. PSLU 22-0007 would be the special land use to allow for a conveyor-type auto wash on the property. And then finally, the site plan is for a review request for the construction of a conveyor-type auto wash with other on-site amenities. So this is the property in question, shown in red. Currently has a partially occupied office building on it. We are on the west side of Southfield Road. This is what the building currently looks like. Again, it's a two-story building, and as I noted, partially occupied. Current zoning is OS office service, and as I noted, the petitioner is seeking a conditional rezoning to B3 general business. Basically, a conditional rezoning is the petitioner provides a document to the city stating that they will rezone the property to a particular district subject to certain conditions. In this case, the only use that they would be looking for and making part of the conditional rezoning is a conveyor-type auto wash only. No other uses that are allowed within the B3 general business, either permitted or a special land use, would be able to move forward unless that particular conditioning rezoning agreement was nullified in the future. So again, what the petitioner is looking for from a rezoning standpoint is a conditional rezoning to B3 to allow for the conveyor type auto wash. This is the proposed site plan for the building. The proposed auto wash building itself is generally in about the same location as the existing office building is. Access would be off of North Drive, and as was noted last week, this is a private drive. The attorney who was here last week has provided the city with some information regarding, we talked about maintenance of of North Drive. So he did provide some information, which I did provide to you on his statement with regard to the splitting up or the sharing of costs related to maintenance of that street. But again, this is the proposal. I believe that there's a colored rendition, a little bit easier to see. There's significant landscaping on this site where currently there isn't any. There'll be some brand new landscaping. They are showing basically the flow of traffic would come off North Drive on the east, would be the eastern portion of the property, circle around through the drive area to the north, and then come back east and go through the building itself and then exit on the east side. They are providing the access or the emergency exit aisle as well, should there be a need to get out of the lanes, should someone have to. They're also providing the required pedestrian connections. There's no waivers required for anything on this property. They meet all setback requirements, parking requirements, stacking, etc. This is the floor plan for the interior. Landscape plan, as I noted, there's a lot of landscaping on this property, including along what would be the west property line, where they're putting in some significant landscaping to act as a buffer and act as a wall between themselves and the apartment complex directly to the west. Elevations of the building. These are north-south, and then the east-west elevations of the building. And with that, the attorney is here this evening. He had asked if he could explain a few slides here.
Thank you. Good evening. Patrick Howe on behalf of the petitioner, Go One LLC. Madam Chair, Mr. Spence, thank you for having us this evening. This is a continuation of our discussion from last week, and we went back and addressed a number of issues and questions that you asked us to address, which we're going to speak to momentarily. With me tonight, we have the engineer, Eric Williams, and Dennis Miller with Clean Express Auto Wash. So you're going to hear from all three of us, and at this time I'm going to turn over to Eric to speak about the functionality of the site and the site plan itself.
Eric, if you need me to advance a slide or something, just let me know.
If you could just flip to the site plan.
I'm sorry?
Flip to the site plan, maybe the colorized
This one right here?
version. All right, good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone again. Eric Williams with Southfield Engineering and Design. Address is 607 Shelby Street, Detroit, Michigan. So as everybody knows and has heard, we are seeking a conditional rezoning for the property located at 30233 Southfield Road. I think Jeff, obviously showed what it looks like today. It's about a 24,000 square foot office building. 80% of the site is paved. There's little to no landscaping. So I think, it's somewhat of an eyesore. It's dated, and we're obviously seeking to redevelop and bring a modern new car wash to the property. So to go through kind of the site layout, the access and circulation on site, as Jeff alluded to, the main access point is coming off of Southfield Road. You would take a right or left turn onto North Drive. Once you enter the site, you're going to head northbound. You have two options when you first enter the site. You can take a left at the first point to access the vacuums. These are free to anyone. There's 20 vacuum positions. There's 4 standard parking spaces for employees. If you decide not to utilize a vacuum, you can continue north into the actual car wash queue. There's around 1,260 lineal feet of stacking for vehicles, so that equates to 63 cars or so. That's nearly double what the city ordinance would require, so there should be no issues or impact to any adjacent properties, no backups onto any adjacent roadways or anything of the sort. There are 3 different escape points should you need to exit the wash, or should you need to exit the drive-through prior to getting a wash. The first one would be just north of the dumpsters, kind of at the far west end of the drive-through. You would be able to go back into the parking field and then exit onto North Drive. The other one would be an escape point at the southwest corner of the site that would allow you to exit onto North Drive, and then you can make it back out to Southfield Road, or whichever direction you choose. And then the final exit would be just west of the car wash. Prior to entering, you could again re-enter into the parking area should your vehicle be too large or some other issue arise. So there's obviously adequate area to escape should that be the case, and obviously plenty of room to stack vehicles on site. To touch on the landscaping, I think the one thing that this rendering is missing is there was a request from the city to provide a bus stop or an enhanced bus stop at the northeast corner of the site. I think right now the sign is mounted to a telephone pole, and that's about it. So we are willing to provide a sidewalk area, a pedestrian enclosure, a bus stop enclosure, whatever you might call it, benches, and a trash receptacle. So that didn't make it onto this plan, but that is on the site plan if you look at that. Kind of going west into the site, if you've driven by, you'll see that the storage facility, retail facility, they have the masonry piers, decorative fencing all along their frontage. We're proposing the same thing to kind of mimic that and continue it north up Southfield Road. And then as you go deeper into the site, there's obviously landscaping throughout, and then a big emphasis put on the west property line. We want to make sure that there's dense evergreens, they're going to be large trees, and they will screen any view of the wash, the stacked vehicles throughout the year. With that, there will be lighting improvements throughout the site, so you will see high efficiency LED light fixtures, full cutoff, nothing, no floodlight style lighting. They'll all have backlight shielding, so no trespass onto the target to the north, the apartments to the west, storage to the south. And then I think the last piece would just be talking about pedestrian connectivity. I know I touched on the bus stop. We're going to maintain the sidewalk on the north side of North Drive, so there will be no change to that. And then at the far west end of the car wash, there will be a connection for any employees that may utilize the buses or bike. And at that point, there will also be bike racks for any bikes that may make it on site. With that, we appreciate the time this evening, and I would like to turn it over to Mr. Miller and allow him to talk about the actual tenant themselves.
Mr. Miller, before you begin, let me remind the audience that this room is, you can hear things bouncing off the room. So please limit your comments, or please hold your comments with each other until the presentations are concluded, because we can hear all of that, and we are trying to hear the presenter. So please be mindful of that. Thank you. Mr. Miller, please proceed.
Thank you. Dennis Miller, I'm the consultant for Express Wash Concepts, and they're the parent company for this Clean Wash Express that we're going to do here in Southfield. Express Wash has 72 locations throughout the country right now, in Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and North Carolina. And this will be our first introduction into Southeast Michigan. We don't have any washes here. Our closest wash is in Toledo. In fact, we just opened a new one in Perrysburg that I had the opportunity to go down and look at last week. Came out very nice. And they're all company owned. It's not franchised, so this wash will be run by our company. And what we do is we have several washes that we do, and the district managers and managers. Just give you an idea, employees, we have about 6 full-time employees and 6 part-time employees. And we operate the wash in a first-class manner at all times. We have 3 people during the day at the wash, and Actually, one person not hangs out, but watches the vacuums, because we have a lot of vacuums on site, and making sure they work, and we keep the site very clean as far as paper and trash, excuse me. Right now, in 2021, we washed 8 million cars, so we do have experience in this business, and we've won a bunch of awards in 2021, and very aggressive in our plans. We have 40 in contract or in development by the end of 2023, so we're ramping up development of new washes, and they're very excited about Southeast Michigan to come into. We also, we're green, very green, our car washes. As far as water efficiency, we talked last week about the number of gallons and such to wash a car, and we recycle the water. It's usually 120 gallons of water that for one wash, and 100 of those gallons gets recycled through 3 tanks underground, and 20 go into the sanitary sewer at the end of the rinse motion. So only 20 gallons get released into the sanitary system. So very, very green, and we even our signage and electrical state-of-the-art equipment, and it's very efficient in what we do. And we do invest in the communities that we go into. We come in and do fundraisers when we open, and we try to be part of the community at all times. And we do donate a lot of money to the local schools and kids clubs and that type of thing. Right now we have about 1,000 members on our team, employees. Our headquarters are in Columbus, Ohio, and not too far from here. And the executive team visits the sites a lot. In fact, they come up here to Detroit because of it being a new market opportunity. So they spend a lot of time here and to get to know the market. With that, I'll let Pat finish up with the questions that you had last week. But if you have any other further questions about the company, I can answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis and Eric. So now my job is to talk about why this is a good use of this site. Mr. Spencer, if you could just go up to the first slide. And looking at this site, it's our position that this is the last missing piece. I mean, this is such a heavily traveled thoroughfare to Southfield with first-class businesses up and down Southfield, going from Target down to Home Depot, recently developed Easy Storage, recently developed McDonald's, significantly renovated liquor store. This is the last piece, the last somewhat dormant building built in 1960s, low-rise office building that we think would be best served with a new use. And that use is the only use that we're requesting, which is a state-of-the-art, eco-friendly conveyor-type car wash under the B3 zoning designation. We're not asking for anything else. If we cannot use it for the car wash use, we will resort back to the current zoning of OS office. I first want to touch on about 5 questions you asked us to address at last week's meeting. First question you said, I need to understand the access here, okay? You're not coming in directly from a curb cut off Southfield, but it's a private drive. Explain that to us. We went back and pulled title, as we talked about last week, and submitted the grant of easement, which is a document created presumably when the apartments were built in 1967, granting access to the site through a private drive. There's North Drive to the north, South Drive to the south, but they're actually private drives. We also created very quickly with our consultants at Chemtech an easement survey, which we provided to staff to give you a better idea of what are we talking about. This document's blurry, it's older. What does this mean? We have an easement survey that we provided in your packet. And we also wanted to understand, well, who's in charge of the maintenance of this? Our reading of the document is that the apartment owner is in charge of the maintenance, its cost. The parcels on Southfield Road share in the cost of the utilities. Is that fair? I don't know. That's what the document says. In that spirit, my client, Brandon Kassab, reached out to the apartment owner directly last Thursday to be fully transparent about this process, about this project, and about any concerns they or their apartment renters may have. In those conversations, it was brought up that we would share in some of the maintenance and costs in anything that was required along the 70 feet or so along North Drive, or even more, that we may use in connection with the car wash. Those details haven't been ironed out yet, but it's an honest gesture and one that we're honestly willing to continue with Cranbrook Center Apartments, our neighbor. We also reached out to the other neighbors. We reached out to the Easy Storage. They've indicated they're fully supportive of the project, and I believe there was an email submitted. I can't confirm that, but they said they were going to submit an email. We also reached out to Target. They said they had no objections to the project. And we also reached out to Total Beverage, and they were supportive of the project and indicated they would submit something in writing. Again, I cannot confirm that. We want to be a good neighbor, and we think this is a great use of this site. The next thing you asked us to reach out to talk about was what's unique about this. I think Dennis touched on that a little bit, but it's a unique concept. It's fast, it's clean, it's efficient. There are no personnel doing hand drying. There are no specialty detailing. This is get in, get out in a safe, clean manner. We're unique in that we recycle 100 of the 120 gallons used per car wash, and it's in a very efficient process. The next question, Commissioner Martin, you asked about was, what do we do to prevent ice from building up? We looked into that, and the last 40 feet of concrete at the exit of our building is heated, which it goes a long way in preventing from any ice buildup in that area or even extending out beyond that. Furthermore, no employees are drying or directing traffic. It's a fully well-striped, well-signed site, and it's fully automated with those measures in place. There won't be people about between cars as they're exiting. You then asked about our prices. We submitted that in writing. We think we have very competitive pricing, both per wash and a monthly subscription basis. I don't want to talk about our competitors' pricing, but we fit within the marketplace, and we think it's going to be a home run in Southfield. Those are the things you asked us to look into. We got on it right away. We had good dialogue, we think, with our neighbors, dialogue that we're willing to continue, and hope that they agree that we're a great use of this site. We have approval criteria, as you know, that we have to satisfy. Mr. Spence, if you go to the first slide. The first item I'd like to address, I'd like to just go through all of them because we're combining these three requests, is the rezoning criteria. The next slide, please. These are the criteria for a conditional rezoning, which we believe we satisfy. Pardon me. The first criteria being the proposed use is compatible with other uses and policies designated for the property in the city's future and master land use plan. As you can tell from the zoning map before, we are a sort of an island amongst B2 and B3 zoning designation. We think changing this to B3 for this use is compatible with those adjacent uses. Furthermore, the current master plan, future master plan, calls for uses that are compatible with a heavily traveled thoroughfare, and we think this is exactly that. So we believe we match the existing and future land use plan for the city. The next criteria for conditional rezoning is a proposed use under a conditional rezoning agreement is compatible with other zones and surrounding area. We've touched on that. Next is the public services and facilities are adequate for the proposed use and will not be any adverse impact from the development or use if allowed under a conditional rezoning agreement. Utilities on site are adequate. We've confirmed that. And there will not be any adverse impact on the surrounding neighbors. We're taking great measures to make sure that we fit within this neighborhood. The screening to the west will not only block lights, diminish noise, but really the distance between our building and the nearest apartment to the west is approximately 400 feet. So we're up a significant distance between the two buildings, much longer than, let's say, the McDonald's building is to the apartment just south of us. Furthermore, we have, many measures in place just for the flow of the site, the stacking we've talked about. Really no risk of stacking going back into the private drive. We have double the stacking lanes. We have significant lighting to make it a safe site, and we think it's going to be a great fit. The next criteria for the conditional rezoning is when weighing the reasonably expected burdens likely to result from the development against the reasonable expected benefits of the development will advance the public interest. Right now, this dormant office building is probably serving about 20 people. That's it. It's less than 50% occupied. You go by there, there's a few cars in the parking lot, et cetera. And this is such a vibrant corridor. I mean, we have this large site, and we think we could open it up to many, many more residents, businesses, visitors to have this experience. So yes, will there be impacts from development? There's impacts from every development, but we're taking every measure we can to be a good neighbor. And that's with the landscaping, reducing the size of the footprint of the building, going from, significantly reducing that, increasing the amount of green space on the site. It should just be a really good-looking site as well. So those are the conditional rezoning requirements. We think we satisfy all of those. Moving on quickly to the special use approval, which is the next approval we need for this. Those are set forth in section 5.1691 and 5.1692B. I'm not going to go through all of these. You have them in the packet, and they're submitted in both my letter dated October 28th and the follow-up on December 12th. We believe we meet all the standards within the special land use category. It's a use as a size and character that's compatible, harmonious with the neighborhood. It's designed to eliminate any possible nuisance. Sound, we're well within the decibels of the ordinance. Lighting, we're screening that with our landscaping. Traffic, we're doubling the stacking spaces to make sure there's no backup onto the private drive or even Southfield Road. So all of those factors, we're mitigating any potential nuisance. The proposed use is in accord with the spirit of the Southfield zoning ordinance. Again, we think this is a little missing middle on this corridor that really would ignite this property and put it in fitting with all of its neighbors. It's arranged in a way to prevent noise, dust, dirt, glaze, odor, fumes. This is a first-class operation. You're not going to have to worry about any of that. It not be adverse to promotion of the health, safety, welfare. To the contrary, this is a well-run organization with many, 1,000 employees, and they know exactly what they're doing. And lastly, the proposed use is designated to operate to provide security and safety to the employees and the general public. We talked about that with all the measures we're taking. We also meet the special use approval in section 5.1692B, specific to motor vehicle users. Clean operations are enclosed within the building, continuous movement of cars, driveway meets the ordinance requirements, lanes are provided to protect interference with traffic. We meet all of the length of the lanes requirements. None of the operations are conducted off of the parcel. There's no spilling out into the private drive, et cetera. The building setback is compliant. The ingress egress points are from the major thoroughfare, and the site is drained all within this site. So we think this is a great fit for this corridor. We're excited about this project. We want to be good neighbors. We'll continue the dialogue with Cranbrook Center Apartments and all the other neighbors to make this work for everyone. And we appreciate all this work the city staff has put into this and the productive questions you challenged us to initiate the dialogue that we had this past week. And with that, all of our team members and the owner are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for PCZR 22-0001. If there's any public that's available that would like to speak about it, please approach the podium. If there's more than one, please move down that way. As you approach the podium, be prepared to share your name and your address.
Hello, how y'all doing this afternoon? My name is Jerome Leitner, and I've been living at Cranbrook Apartment Center for 30 years.
And your address?
My address, 18415 Norfolk Drive, apartment 32, Southfield, Michigan. That's one thing I liked about living where I'm at in Cranbrook. It's an apartment, but I call it my home because it's beautiful. And over the years, when they put up that McDonald's, that was okay, but I found out with the McDonald's over there, sometimes the people drive into the drive-through and they be blocking the driveway, which is South Drive, to get to Southfield. And sometimes I had to blow the horn, let people know, hey, this supposed to be open. Now, with this car wash thing, I can't understand why we want a car wash on Southfield Road, which you have one already on Southfield Road, which is Jack's Car Wash. Now, it's a lot of traffic from Targets, from Home Depot. I'm talking about just on this side, on the west side, and from, different stores. And it's great that we have two driveways to get out of the complex, one on the north side, one on the south side. Now, with this car wash coming up, this could cut that's north side out from we going in or coming out. And Southfield traffic be so heavy, if you coming south and going north and you want to make a turn into the complex, well, you got two entries. You can go through the north side or you can go through the south side. And so a lot of time I be driving down, I be south going north, and I'm driving down Southfield, getting in the center lane to make that turn. And you'd be surprised how many people would be in the center lane. Instead of turning where they're supposed to turn, they'll go down two other driveways before they make that turn. And a lot of time that causes confusion. Then again, on North Drive, on South Drive, when you're on South Drive and you're coming down, you can go out this way to Southfield, or you can keep straight south to the other side and go out. So that's convenient that we got two ways to go out. But like I said again, I know Southfield want to build up, want to get beautiful, but why they want to put all the places they want to put a car wash, why we could have two car washes between 12 mile and 13 mile on the same side of the street. And I just think that property can be put to use somewhere else. Well, as we've been living there for so long, we still have right-of-way going in and out of that complex. Because a lot of time, it is, excuse the expression, but it's a hell to get out of the complex on the Southfield, because a lot of times Southfield traffic be so heavy. And the way I'm listening to people talking about the car wash, that we can't have that on the North Drive, instead of we being able to go in on one side and go out the other side, that could be taken down. And I don't think that's fair. I know we just residents and I know they businesses, but like I said, they got a lot of people live in that unit. And we used to just getting in and out, easier. And by this car wash coming up, be more traffic and everything. And I just don't think that should be a right move to make.
Thank you for sharing.
I know I'm just one person, but I appreciate if y'all would think about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Chair people. What are the requirements you wanted me to say? Name, what would you want? Name, address?
Name and your address.
Khalif Stanton Morse, address is 18468 South Drive, apartment 66. I've been there 4 months. 3 concerns. Number 1, as I mentioned earlier, we have a Jack's Car Wash right next door, basically. We have our apartment complex, Target, a building, Jack's Car Wash. Kind of close to have 2 in the same block, basically. Number 2, the traffic concerns are on the corner end of the proposed place for the car wash is an egress for Target, a heavily used exit for Target. So it's already hard enough to turn into my complex when you have traffic from Target coming out. To then add a car wash where people are turning in, blocking it more, will make it even harder to get into my complex. Third concern is, it's nice to have a heated, 40-foot driveway. What about cars that are dripping wet driving onto Southfield Road? Or about all that ice from the wet cars? And 3, the element of more visibility to our complex, bringing more traffic to our complex. And 4, the shrubs that are proposed at the end of the complex, will it block the view from turning to see oncoming cars so you can make safe turns? I think it's too dangerous to have. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Hi, good evening. I live at 18187, my name is Kathy, South Drive in the Cranbrook Apartments. Okay, when I come out of my apartment, I can see Target, I can see the store, I can see the site that they want to put the car wash on. It's like walking out of my house into the backyard and looking at the car wash. The space is not that big, and I would love to see how they're going to have a car wash when you turn in off Southfield Road onto North Drive. You have to keep straight. It's a one-way street. I don't know how they're going to have a car wash there that can exit or enter without a congestion. It's a mess, and that's not a big section they're talking about. It's not really big. I don't see how they're going to put a car wash there at all. But I know the traffic is going to triple. in our complex. When we come out, it's bad enough. When I turn out of South Drive, I have to wait for McDonald's drive-through because those cars turn off Southfield Road, and they sit there until they can get in the drive-through, and I'm sitting there until I can go into Southfield Road. So I don't know how this is going to work out, but it sounds horrendous to me, and you'd have to live there to know. I can't see this being feasible for us at all, and it's a car wash. I've never seen a quiet car wash. That's my opinion on it.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Carol Bradley, 18187 South Drive. I've been there 18 years, and I've seen a lot of businesses come and go. As everybody was saying again, that I don't see how it's going to work. I'm on South Drive. Like they said, there's so much traffic coming in and out. I already saw almost a couple accidents because I'm sitting right directly there when the two streets cross. So it's going to be a mess. It's just going to be a disaster. I see accidents. It's going to happen because it's going to be too much traffic coming from North Drive, from the car wash, from South Drive. I don't see how they're going to do it. So this is just my concern.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Hello, my name is Regina Harvey. I'm the property manager at Cranbrook Center Apartments. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, which lives at 18455 South Drive, apartment 165. She's an elderly lady, and she likes to get up and walk the property. Her concern is with all the different traffic she's not feeling comfortable with the extra traffic that's going to be involved with this car wash. I have a petition here that my residents, a portion of my residents has signed against the car wash for various reasons, if they're already mentioned. I emailed it over to you. That's it.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Hi, my name is Ryan Catu. I live at 19684 Middlesex Avenue, lifelong resident since 1972. And I pass this building all the time and was wondering what's going to happen to it. It was good to hear that there was going to be a possible significant improvement to this property and change the use. I know it's a pretty outdated office building, which in today's world, office buildings are becoming a lot more, not as, I'd say, needed, as people are working more from home and remotely. And so we have to think outside of the box to see about what other uses we can use for these older buildings and locations. When I'm looking at the site plan here and the way the dimensions of the property, it really does benefit from having such a use that needs a long rectangle shape. I understand the concerns of the residents behind the property. I think there's only a handful of car washes in the city of Southfield with approximately over 75,000 residents. So there are discussion about there being a car wash already on the street. Why do we need another one? I don't understand that logic. It's like saying, we have a hair salon down the street, why do we need another one? Or we have a bakery down the street, why do we need another one? Well, we need it because we need to have, choices on where we want to go and where we want to service. I think having two car washes there just provides more service to the community, because as we all know that sometimes these car washes, which I've seen in Southfield, don't even have half the stacking of this. Sometimes could get backed up into the street, but this lot, how large it is, I think would reduce that possibility. So once again, I hope that the council would think about that. This could be one of the best fit for this property, and hopefully this last piece of property on Southfield Road get redeveloped.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Hello, everyone. My name is Starlet Dumas Cade, and my address is 18222 South Drive, apartment 101. My husband and I reside there over 20 years now. And the neighbor that was talking first, he's right. It's really terrible. I mean, I have to be to work at 7, and I get up at 5:30, leave out my house a quarter till. I can't even get out, and it still be dark. So when I'm coming home and I have to go somewhere out shopping, and we can't get right where McDonald's to make that left turn, we go down to where Cranbrooks is, right there. Can't get in there either. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I really think that, please, I'm asking, just think about it, because it doesn't make sense. It's a car wash right around the corner on 13 Mile. Then we got Jack's Car Wash right there. It really doesn't make any sense to add another car wash, because it's going to be so many accidents. And what they should do is put a light right there on the corner where McDonald's is, right there on South Drive. It won't have an accident. You have to go way down to the light, keep from having an accident to turn, because so many people just come right at you. You got apartments across the street trying to come out while you trying to make a left turn. It doesn't make sense. So I'm just asking, can you please just think about it, because it's really going to cause a really big problem. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Etterbeek. I work for, I'm a managing partner of LR Management, which is the management company that runs Cranbrook Center Apartments. Our address is 2150 Butterfield Drive, Suite 210 in Troy, Michigan. Our company represents over 10,000 apartments we manage, and this is the first time we've ever come before a council about a concern for our residents. Cranbrook Center we also have a part ownership of, so I represent all the owners that are involved, is a home to so many great people, and we make it a home. And it's quiet, it's somewhat secluded. It was very well planned out by the city years ago. As for the easement, when it was built, I'm sure the easement was built for an office building with the apartments behind it. I don't know the rules on the easement. I have yet to be able to get a hold of my attorney to find out what can be done to keep the flow of traffic to a minimum. I share the concerns with all our residents, and I drive that property several times a month, and it is very difficult to get out of that area on Southfield. You have Target, you have a right turn lane going into the North Drive. People put their blinker on, but they're really going to McDonald's, so they go right through that intersection. There have been accidents at McDonald's. The mention was 400 feet from McDonald's. We also have a carport in between McDonald's and us, and we don't have that carport in between what would be the car wash and us. So the noise would become a bigger factor because there's not as much to guard it from. And we are all for progress and development, but in this case, we feel that it's going to adversely affect our residents, and that's why we're here to talk. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Is there any other public comment for PC ZR 22-0001?
If I may,
Any other public comment?
yeah, if I may, Madam Chair, we did receive some comments from the public that I do want to read into the record. And the first one of the residents or property management did note that she had sent a copy of the petition to us. I did receive it this afternoon, and I will read that into the record. It says, "We, the residents of Cranbrook Center Apartments in Southfield, Michigan, Petition against the proposed rezoning of 30233 Southfield Road. Proposal seeks to rezone the land in the area from OS Office Service to B3 General Business to establish a conveyor-type motor vehicle wash. Car wash business in this area would create unwanted noise, traffic throughout the apartment community. In addition, there will be major increase in traffic on North Drive, which is the entrance to Cranbrook Center Apartments. Traffic will also increase in the turning lanes on Southfield Road, which will likely cause an increase in traffic accidents and collisions in front of our community. We've had a total of 3 collisions this year from people using the turning lane on Southfield Road to South Drive, another entrance to Cranbrook Center Apartments. These collisions involve people who were driving into the McDonald's parking lot, which is also located in front of our apartment community on Southfield Road and South Drive. And as it was noted, there are a number of names on this who signed this petition. In this case, there's 17. There's more names on here, but there's only 15 signatures. So I believe you have a copy of this. I gave you a copy of that. The next one is from Total Beverage, and it says, Dear City of Southfield, thank you for notifying us of the proposed rezoning. Total Beverage Southfield supports the proposed development at 30233 Southfield Road, as we feel it will improve the look and the performance of business along Southfield Road corridor. We would like the Planning Commission to vote in support of the car wash development. Regards, Total Beverage Southfield. The next one, Dear City of Southfield, my name is Sewell Kizzy. I am the owner of Savvy Sliders located at 12 Mile on Southfield Road. I am writing in support of the car wash development at 30233 Southfield Road, as I feel it will increase retail business along Southfield Road and be good for surrounding businesses. It will replace an old and out-of-use office building that I pass every day. Thank you for your consideration. And the last one, Dear City of Southfield, my name is Chris Denha. I am the owner of Donut Bar and Coffee located at 29039 Southfield Road. Wanted to reach out in support of the car wash development at 30233 Southfield Road. I pass by this site almost every day, and the nearby Jack's is very old and it's tough to get through. I would be a customer at this new site and hope the Planning Commission supports the proposed development.
At this time, I'd like to close, I did close the public hearing, didn't I? No, okay, I'd like to, that's right, I was going to close. I'd like to close the public hearing for PCZR 22-0001. Now I'd like to open the public hearing for...
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I believe you'd want to have discussion about the rezoning before you move on.
I'm falling down.
Commissioners. Commissioner Huntington.
I think the conditional rezoning request for this property is good. I like the conditional rezoning. If for some reason it doesn't work out, it reverts back to office. I think the petitioner did a very good job with his presentation and covered every issue that I had as far as noise, traffic, and the general concerns. You know, office buildings, old office buildings are antiquated now. It looks bad. I think updating that area with the car wash and landscaping, I think is really going to help Southfield Road as far as the appearance. I'm not sure why Jack's would have a monopoly on car washes on Southfield Road, but I'm in agreement with competition, and I think competition will help the residents of the city of Southfield. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Griffith.
This is Southfield Road. It's the biggest retail corridor in our city. There's many other big retail businesses. It's a draw for companies, and I understand why, as a retailer, you want to put your business where there's cars and people and wallets in those people's possession, ready to spend for your services. So it's Southfield Road. This is the business corridor. All the adjacent businesses are zoned similar in the B2, B3 uses. And there can be some complementary secondary uses as we transition further into single-family zoning beyond, which we have. So I don't think there's anything out of line with this rezoning. The other good thing about a conditional rezoning is that reducing the intensity of what can happen, and they're very specifically telling us what's going to happen instead of, this isn't going to be another gas station. I think that's the most overused, overpopulated use in anywhere in the city. And they're saying they're not going to have this, they're not going to have that. They're only going to do one very specific thing. So I think it's a good move, further enhancing their case to rezone this site.
Commissioner Willis?
A couple of questions. The first is, perhaps for the attorney, there's going to be a bus stop. It sounds like you're adding to
Through the
essentially.
chair, if I could, Mr. Willis, we're just talking about the rezoning right now.
I'm sorry, okay.
So I would just limit your comments and questions to the merits of the rezoning.
Okay, okay. No questions. Thanks.
Commissioner Martin?
Related to the rezoning, I'd like to know, since this is a specific rezoning that nothing else can be there, how long do you think it would take for your return on investment so that you continue to stay there? And then what happens, or how long of a time frame would it take for you to decide that it is not a money-making money-making process, that you want to abandon it, and then it has to stay vacant for at least a year before it can be rezoned for other uses? And why are you not considering any additional uses for the land other than strictly the one item? We just heard someone talk about not having additional gas stations, but having a car wash is a single item that can't be used for something else. So that's my concerns.
Commissioner Goodwin-Dye? Oh,
Take-
Crowe?
I'd have the attorney could respond to those questions, and I believe there was a reverter clause in the conditional zone that you may address, that we don't have to wait a year to rezone, because I believe there's a time period where it would just automatically go back to OS.
Do you know what that?
Well, I'm going to have the
Okay,
attorney
I
address
got you.
that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Crowe, and thank you, Mr. Martin, for your question. This project is ready to go. So the applicant as Go One, if approvals are all issued, the end user would own the property. So Clean Express Auto Wash, corporate, out of Columbus, not a franchise or anything, would own the property, and their interest is vested in the millions of dollars that they would invest in the dirt and the operation. So it's not a rental situation or test drive. I mean, if this is approved, they would own the dirt, being the auto wash company, no lease, and they'd be investing millions of dollars to open this new location.
So with the $1 million more investment, there's the Public Art Commission that you also have to consider. So that would have to be something that would be figured in also.
Sure.
If you could address, I thought I read in the conditional zoning that if you were to abandon this as a car wash, it would revert back to OS?
Yes.
That's correct.
What was that time period?
I'd have to, the draft agreement, let's see here. I believe it's in the ordinance, it's 1 year.
That's where I got it.
Well, we have a 1 year with regards to rezoning, but I thought I read somewhere in here that it would revert back to OS within a certain time period.
If I may, through the chair, the paragraph that City Planner Crowe is talking about, it notes that notwithstanding anything to the contrary stated in this agreement, owner shall have the right to voluntarily terminate this agreement by delivering written notice to the city. Therefore, to the city, such termination, the land will automatically revert to the former OS zoning classification as set forth in paragraph 1 hereof, as if the city had terminated the agreement, and such terms will govern the respect to the owner's continued use of the land.
So there's no 1 year, there's no 1 year time period? It's-
Correct, and I have found the provision now, section 5 in the draft conditional rezoning agreement. If we were to just change the use, okay, we just stopped washing cars and started painting cars or something, that would be a default of the conditional rezoning agreement. The city would have to give us notice, written notice. We have 30 days to remedy that. Without remedying that within the 30-day period, it automatically reverts to OS. And that's in Section 5 of the draft agreement that we provided. So,
Okay, and here again, you say you're specifically car wash, so that's why nothing else.
nothing else. No, car wash user would own the property. That's all we want at this site. So we're not speculators. I mean, we have pretty much a completed site plan. So we've gone to that length. We have the user ready to go, and they're very excited about the site. So there's nothing speculative, or we might want to do this or do that. It's all buttoned up. The draft agreement's there, and like I said, any default of that would be 30 days to cure, or it's back to OS.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin Dye?
I don't know if this is the right place to ask this question, but was there a traffic study done in that area?
You want to address the traffic study, Eric?
So I think we had discussed last week, and I apologize for glazing it over in my presentation, but we did complete a traffic impact study. They did review the North Drive and Southfield Road intersection, along with the South Drive and Southfield Road intersection. So the synopsis was South Drive and Southfield Road, there would be no impact, no change. You would see no notable increase or decrease in traffic at that point. North Drive, what the traffic impact study came up with is at the peak hour, which would be evening Fridays, when people would, most likely visit the site. I think the big concern would be egress. I think we heard it from the residents. Egress, the amount of stacking that you would see of vehicles trying to exit from North Drive back onto Southfield Road, the 95th percentile queue would be 1.5 cars. So not even 2 full cars. So there is adequate room for vehicles to make a left or right turn out of the site. I think the other items that they had noted were some concerns with McDonald's as it relates to South Drive. I think in looking at that, I'm not intimately familiar with the site plan, but I think some of those issues that are arising from looking at the map is when you take a left-hand turn off of Southfield Road onto South Drive, you would then have to take a left into McDonald's. And I think that's where they're saying vehicles are queuing up and creating issues. And so obviously if vehicles are stacked in McDonald's parking lot, you're not going to be able to make that left turn, and you're hindering South Drive movements. As you saw from the site plan, we've got room to stack 60 cars on our property. When you turn off of Southfield Road onto North Drive, there are no stop signs. There is nothing stopping you from either continuing back into Cranbrook or making a right-hand turn and entering our property. So there should be no delay when people are making that turn off of Southfield Drive onto North Drive and then eventually into the site. I think that hits on it. During, weekend peak hour, so Saturdays, afternoons typically, based on the national data, we wouldn't expect to see any more than 56 new vehicles in an hour. So we're talking less than 1 additional vehicle per minute to this site. So I think if you think about that, that's a negligible impact. I mean, 1 car every 60 seconds is, almost unnoticeable at that point. We also sent this to the Southfield Engineering Department, and Terry, I don't think we've seen a response from them at this point. Is that true?
I don't know. We could follow up with that.
Okay, and we did approach Oakland County Road Commission, and they had no objections to the project, so.
Can we get a copy?
Commissioner Goodwin, Commissioner Venuti.
Thank you. There's written in the agreement that if the owner violates, or if there are any violations of the owner, that they have 30 days to rectify the violation. But I want to know, in the agreement, is there any number of days that's given advance notice to the city?
You want to just talk about the specifics regarding Section 5 under the violation of the terms? So, Commissioner, you're asking about advance notice to the city regarding?
Yeah, the owner has 30 days if he violates anything. He has 30 days to rectify that with the city.
Yeah, so the
correct?
city would issue a notice through the codes department of any violation. You'd have 30 days to correct that
Right.
according to this
But
agreement.
is there any number of days that if he decides, if the owner decides to terminate for whatever reason the agreement, do you have to give the city advance notice, number of days or anything like that, if you decide to terminate?
I don't believe so.
Does
I
that
think-
make sense?
Right, so if we abandoned the site, this document would be recorded, so this would be recorded in the Oak County Register of Deeds. And paragraph 5 says if we're in default, or if we voluntarily surrender the site, that the city may record with the Register of Deeds a notice that this agreement has terminated and is no longer in effect. So it's a unilateral sort of, we can take this back and put that of record. So I don't, if we're voluntarily ceasing operations, I don't think we have to take any action. It would just be automatic. And if we don't correct a default within 30 days, the city, without any hearing, it's pretty aggressive language here in Section 5. There doesn't have to be a hearing before this body or city council. It's just, you're done. And you're OS now, and now you're not conforming, and you'd have to come back and get it approved again. So it's a pretty burdensome terms against us if we don't follow the strict letter of this agreement.
And if I could, through the chair, Mr. Spence, document was drafted with the assistance of our city attorney?
That I don't know if, I don't believe so. I believe that they drafted the agreement.
This was based on a form provided by Mr. Spence. I sent back a red line making very minor changes to the form agreement that the city has used in the past with the anticipation that it would be acceptable to the law department.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have, Ms. King will review everything
Correct.
before it goes to council.
Yeah.
But if this was a template that came from our city attorney's office that was used prior to.
Yes, correct.
Commissioners, are there any other questions? Is there a motion? Oh, no, is there a recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to PCZR 22-0001, the Planning Department does make a favorable recommendation to conditionally rezone 1.5 acres of land, 1.54 acres of land from OS Office Service to B3 General Business with a conditional rezoning agreement for the following reasons. Southfield Comprehensive Master Plan indicates North Southfield sub-area for this property. Your request to conditionally rezone from OS Office Service to B3 General Business with a conditional rezoning agreement to allow a single use of the site for a conveyor-type auto wash would meet the master plan's goals, policies. Future land use map is by allowing limited commercial use that will not diminish the property available for North Southfield sub-area uses. It would include a use that would serve nearby residents, employees, and visitors to nearby North Southfield sub-area uses. Proposed conditional rezoning to B3 General Business would allow for the development of the property with a new land use that would be compatible with the abutting existing developments while prohibiting other uses that would be detrimental to the area and cause an increase in traffic congestion. Proposed conditional rezoning would not have an adverse effect upon the adjoining zonings or land uses, and the conditional rezoning agreement is subject to review and approval by the city attorney. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for favorable recommendation of PCZR 22-0001.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Griffiths and second by Commissioner Huntington that we accept the favorable recommendation of PCZR 22-0001. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion. We have one opposition.
No, you have two.
You have two oppositions.
Do a roll call to be safe.
Do a roll call. Commissioner Huntington,
Yes.
Commissioner Griffith,
Yes.
Commissioner Willis,
Yes.
Commissioner Martin,
Nay.
Commissioner Goodwin-Dye, Commissioner Bernuti,
Nay.
Commissioner Geraldine Stevens, Gunn, yes.
So if I may, how many nays?
Two.
There were two. Okay,
Ms. Bermudi and Martin.
okay, thank you.
Given that the majority is in favor, in favor of the favorable recommendation, the recommendation passes for PCZR 22-001. Right?
Yes, so the
Okay.
next item would be the special land use. Again, you have to have a public hearing on this one as well.
Okay, Mr. Spencer, can you give us some background on the special land use, which is PSLU 22-0007?
Well, I have kind of already given you the, all the parameters of the site, both the site plan, the rezoning, and the special land use already.
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing for PSLU 22-0007. Public hearing for PSLU 22-0007. Public hearing for PSLU 22-0007. Given none, I close the public hearing for PSLU 22-0007.
Through the chair, I'm going to make a recommendation, just to move things along a little bit. I'm going to recommend that we postpone the special land use and the site plan to give the applicant opportunity to meet with the ownership representatives of Cranbrook Center Apartments to see if they can come up with some mutual mitigation of some of the issues that were raised tonight, and then bring this back next month. Since you've held the public hearing, we can have further discussion next month, but for good faith, the representative just found out about this as part of the ownership. They need to talk to their partners and attorneys. I've spoken with the applicant. They want to, in good faith, try to negotiate some resolution to some of the issues. So my recommendation at this point is that we take a pause, recommend to a date certain of next month, give them an opportunity to try to meet and resolve some of the issues, and then we can come back and you can make your recommendation at that time.
If I may, through the chair, the date of the Planning Commission regular meeting would be January 25th, 2023. So if you are making a motion to postpone, you do it to a date certain of that date, January 25th, 2023.
And is that for, we have two,
Yes, it would be for both the special land use and the site plan, both.
and that's PSP
22-0007.
So it'd be for PSLU 22-0007 and PSP 22-0011.
0011.
Correct.
I believe Mr. Griffiths
Yeah,
had some
to the chair.
comments.
I think I have a site plan concern, it's also a safety concern, it's also by the neighbors some more trees, kind of a question. It looks like the west property line's heavily treed, which I agree with. I was gonna suggest wrapping those trees around the south, but it also, I think you don't have the clear vision triangle that's required probably because it's a private drive and not a road right of way. I think that pavement, at least from the drawing that I see here that's clipped, that would be creating a safety concern that the second resident mentioned, that you can't see as you're turning that corner. So I think as you're better screening the neighbor's property, you gotta also maintain the clear vision triangle. If you could just take a look at that at the same time, thank you.
There was a hand raised, the attorney.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate Mr. Crote's concern about communication with the neighbors, and we are fully willing to talk to them about any concerns they have. I just want to note that we reached out to them on Thursday, had a generally productive conversation, and subsequent attempts to talk to them or meet with them since last Thursday were not responded to. So, in the efficiencies of all the consultants and team that we have here, along with the efficiencies of the Planning Commission and the City Council, we'd recommend that that dialogue that Mr. Crowe is suggesting, which is a good idea, take place as we move forward in the process. I just don't think postponing these two items when we have Planning Department recommendation of approval for the rezoning, at least, that's what I know of, and general support for that would benefit, any party. And we're continuously open to talking to them. They just haven't returned our attempts.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your thoughts. On the floor right now, we have a recommendation to postpone to a date certain PSLU 22-0007 to a date certain of January 25th, 2023. Is there a motion?
I would support the adjournment.
Excuse me, if we could get the motion on the floor,
Yeah,
and then
and
you
then
can
talk
have
about
further
it.
discussion.
Okay. I would support the adjournment of the listed items until January 25th, 2023.
Okay. Is there any other additional conversation or discussion about that?
If I may, through the
Yeah.
chair, who made the motion and who seconded?
Second.
Who made the motion?
Who seconded?
Commissioner Willis made the motion. Commissioner Huntington seconded. No, you didn't? Who supports it? Okay, who supports it? Okay, Commissioner Drew.
Thank you.
I thought you supported it. I'm sorry. Okay, it's been motion by Commissioner Willis, supported by Commissioner Goodwin Dye. All right?
To postpone
To postpone to
January
a date certain,
25th.
January 25th, 2023. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay.
If I may, we probably would do a roll call
Roll
vote.
call.
Ms. Goodwin Dye?
Aye.
To postpone?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Bernuti?
Postpone.
So that's an aye. Mr. Griffiths?
Opposed.
So that's a nay. Mr. Huntington?
Opposed.
I'm sorry?
Opposed.
Opposed, so no, nay. Mr. Martin?
Postpone.
So an aye. Mr. Willis?
Postpone.
So that's a nay. Dr. Stevens-Gunn?
No postpone.
So that's an aye. So by 4-3, the recommendation is to postpone.
And again, in light of what happened with the Culvers, I just think it's prudent just to take a pause and see if they could try to resolve some of these issues.
Okay.
If I may, you need to do
Yes.
now the same thing on the site plan.
Yes. It's been proposed that we postpone PSP 22-0011 to a date certain of January 25th, 2023. Is there a motion?
I would move
Is
in
there,
support of that.
is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Willis and second by Commissioner Bernuti that we postpone PSP 22-0011. All
And
in
if I
favor?
may,
Yes.
probably let's go through another.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Goodwin Dye?
Yes.
So an aye is to postpone, a nay is not to postpone.
Aye.
So that's an aye. Ms. Bernuti?
Aye.
Mr. Griffiths?
Nay.
Mr. Huntington?
Nay.
Mr. Martin?
Aye to postpone.
Mr. Willis?
Aye, postpone.
And Dr. Stevens-Gunn?
Nay.
So again, we have 4-3 to postpone.
Okay.
Would you mind taking 5?
At this point, we're going to take an adjournment for 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm still in my meeting.
All right. I'd like to reconvene our meeting.
Next,
I'd like to reconvene our meeting.
this night,
Okay. Mr. Spence, I do believe we're down to site plans, E1, PASP 22-0051.
Yes, thank you. So this is kind of a hybrid, so to speak, at least from the standpoint of approvals by the Planning Commission. This is improvements to the Carpenter Lake Nature Preserve. It's located at 27225 West 9 Mile Road. And you'll note in your agenda that we specify the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. And basically what the Michigan Planning Enabling Act says, and I'll read it, it says construction of certain projects in area covered by municipal master plan approval, initiation of work on project requirements, report of advice and advice. Again, this is from the law, okay, so I know it sounds a little funky, but under section 61, it says a street, square, park, playground, public way, ground, or other open space or public building or structure should not be constructed or authorized for construction in an area covered by a municipal master plan unless the location, character, extent of the street, public way, open space, structure, or utility have been submitted to the Planning Commission by the legislative body or other body, in this case being the city planner, having jurisdiction over the authorization or financing of the project and has been approved by the Planning Commission. That's the key point. This needs to be approved by the Planning Commission in order for the city planner to act on the administrative site plan review, which is basically under his purview. So I read that into the record just so you understand that you are basically voting for an approval to allow the city planner to go through the review and approve a administrative site plan on this particular location.
And if I could, since this has received special land use approval in the past from council and site plan approval, and there's no waivers required, then I have the authority to do an administrative review. And as Mr. Spence said, this is an unusual hybrid, but you're actually making your recommendation to me as city planner as opposed to the city council. This will not go in front of city council.
Yeah, so again, the petitioner for this particular project is Parks and Recreation. I noted the location at 27225 West 10 Mile Road. Existing zoning is RE Single Family Residential. And the request is for the construction of a picnic pavilion and restrooms, as well as existing parking lot work, including paver replacement, stormwater management, a new parking lot and drive installation for bus parking, bike racks, barrier-free compliance, landscaping, and pedestrian connection. So this is a little closer look. Now, the park is a lot bigger than what is shown on the image. This is basically the area just off of 10 Mile Road that has basically where the activity that we're discussing this evening is going to take place. Existing conditions of the parking lot in the area surrounding. Property is zoned RE Single Family Residential. Future land use plan is a public park. This is the demo plan, so this plan itself kind of shows you what would be being removed, which includes the existing pavers that are in the parking lot. And then this is the proposed site plan. So again, it does include repaving the existing lot with asphalt, providing a brand new parking lot for more cars, as well as an additional drive with bus parking. And then the plan has actually been expanded to allow for fire department access. They require at least 20 feet width area. So this new plan actually provides for what our fire department requires for their apparatus. That's a little closer look at it. Last week we discussed the pedestrian connection. They do show the sidewalk actually running across the entire portion of the driveway that's shown on the left-hand side of the slide and comes down and terminates right at the roadway there that enters and exits from the property. Also shows the location of both the pavilion and the proposed restrooms, sidewalks, pedestrian connections, etc. These are the two structures that are proposed. Again, one is a pavilion. The other is a restroom, and if I recall, I know last week we talked about the different materials that they could make the restroom out of. I believe that they've settled on cedar. So you'd be looking at the building that's in the brown there. Speaking of cedar buildings, this is a cedar building that's currently located at Pebble Creek Park. This building has been here since at least 1999. One of the reasons why we're showing you this is because we have a concern, not only with this particular development, but all developments, with regard to the abuse that especially the bottom portion of buildings can take, whether it's snow removal, it's lawn mowers, you know, just general people kind of bumping into those bottom areas and are concerned for having something really durable. So again, we're looking at an image that was taken recently of a building that's been there since at least 1999. And you can see that, yeah, it's a little scuffed up at the base. It does appear, though, that it's a pretty hardy material, and that's really the reason for showing this image. With that, we do have our Director of Parks and Recreation, Ms. Fields, here, as well as Chris Riggard, who's the consultant.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. We're always excited to talk about parks, and Carpenter Lake is no exception. Jeff has gone over all the components of the park. I'd like to ask Chris to come up and talk to you about that material that we're going to use on the building that there was concern about. So.
There you go. Don't forget these. Thank you to Terry, and thanks to the Commission. We did hear the concerns, and we've been working with Planning Department on the material selection for the restroom structure. We actually had a sample overnighted here from a manufacturer, which, by the way, is a Michigan manufacturer that I'm happy to pass around. I also have some of their literature here. But in regards to the construction and responding to that point, if you want to flip that photo back up, the cedar material does naturally silver over time. So the silver patina you see at the bottom doesn't necessarily constitute structural damage. It's just a natural weathering of the material, which with proper maintenance, you know, and reapplication of a sealant every 5 years shouldn't be an issue. And if that's an aesthetic that wants to be removed, you know, it is wood, can be sanded, and it can have a material applied to it so it can be restained and look fresh again. So in addition to this construction, what this construction does not have that ours will have, the base course is going to be elevated 8 inches above the concrete. So the area where the salt's going to spread, or you may get nicked with, you know, somebody walking next to it or something along those lines, is actually going to be elevated off the ground. There'll be concrete. So we do take seriously wanting to make sure that the material is durable and lasts the lifespan of the project. We feel like it is durable material. I think that's in your purview to discuss here tonight. So I'm happy to pass this around if anybody wants to see any cedar samples. Thank you.
And I'm comfortable that they satisfied that requirement because it will be up on a curb foundation, plus providing the example there and in the maintenance, that we're comfortable with it, that they met the intent of the ordinance.
Okay. Commissioner Benuti? Commissioner Goodwin-Dye? Commissioner Martin?
The troublemaker. I have a problem in that on the side where you have the walkway to the pavilion and to the restroom, you have one ADA parking space. On the opposite side, you have 2 spaces. I think you should have at least the 2 spaces on the side where the ADA parking spaces for the pavilion and for the restrooms.
Jeff,
That's my only
can you
comment.
put the site plan back up, please?
Go back to, I think it's the first slide that had it.
Do you have a problem providing those, one on either side of the access aisle?
Not at all, I think. Go ahead, you can speak.
You're fine, though. We think it's a great idea. We've had those conversations, so I appreciate you catching that very much.
Yeah,
Thank
only
you.
because, if you got the pavilion, the thing there, just,
Absolutely, access and inclusion, yep.
I'm a nitpicker.
You're not a nitpicker or a troublemaker, we appreciate it.
That's all, thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin Dye. Commissioner Benuti.
Absolutely. I was just about to say, all ages from little, so it could be 3-year-olds. I just had a conversation today with Oakland County Parks and talked about having a naturalist for all of our park tours, all of our nature hikes. And so that's a collaboration, excuse me, that we see going forward, but that's just one example. So we've got other surrounding senior centers that have smart buses and regular size buses coming in. We want to be able to adapt to whoever our neighbor is, as well as our buses. You're welcome.
Commissioner Willis.
I think you shared with us last week, so forgive me for not remembering. You said you were going to close the park for a while to perform the repairs. What are the dates it'll be closed?
Well, it's hard to be specific. We hope to break ground as soon as we're given the go-ahead,
Okay.
weather-wise. And what I said was based on the phase of the project. So if we're in there, we're doing surveying and whatnot, and we don't have any machinery out there, it's not intrusive, nor is it a danger for kids or adults. We'll keep it open as long as we can. But it will be much like the Miller and Sims Park, where once we brought machinery in, started that large equipment, we shut the park down. And we give the residents notice way ahead of time as well. So we'll put it on Facebook, we'll put it on our website as well as the city's website and give everybody really good notice.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Griffiths.
I think it's a good improvement to the park overall. And had I not heard your explanation about why you can't reuse the old pavers and why you have to go to asphalt, I would have been more probing deeper into that. But I think what you proved last time is that there's a bioswale, the bioswale is being expanded, all the stormwater is filtered and remains, so the actual parking surface is less important. And this is more of a value engineering cost to buy asphalt versus fancy pavers that break down in too quickly and they become obsolete. So I'm in favor of all those reasons because you still have the stormwater infiltration component that we push on all the other private developers in the city. So better have a good example in your own backyard, I guess.
Thank you.
Commissioner Huntington.
If I could just piggyback, they also provided additional calculations that there'll be more stormwater treated and filtered than it was under existing conditions.
Commissioner Huntington.
Yep, I really like the plan. The improvements are much needed, and I think this park is going to be a very special place in the city of Southfield. It's going to bring people into our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, are there any other comments? I think it's a wonderful project. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm like Commissioner Willis, how soon can we get started? Mr. Spencer, we have a recommendation.
Yes, Madam Chair. With regard to the improvements to Carpenter Lake at 27225 West 10 Mile Road, the Planning Department does recommend the Planning Commission make a favorable approval to the city planner for the administrative site plan PASP 22-0051 of the request of the Southfield Parks and Recreation for the construction of a picnic pavilion and restrooms existing parking lot work, including paver replacement, stormwater management, new parking lot and driveway work for bus parking, bike racks, barrier-free compliance, landscaping, and pedestrian connections on the property located at 27225 West 10 Mile Road, on the north side of West 10 Mile Road. Sorry, sorry, I have some wrong information in here. It's on the south side of West 10 Mile Road, for the following conditions: subject to Michigan Planning Enabling Act, Act 203 of 2008 as amended, Section 125.3861, and the site shall be developed in accordance with PASP 22-0051, sheet C-001, C-010, C-120, C-130, C-150, C-501, C-502, A-101 dated December 13th, 2022, and if I may add, with the amendment to the site plan for 2 barrier-free spaces adjacent to the pavilion and restroom areas versus the 1.
Okay. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernuti and second by Commissioner Martin that we accept the favorable approval of PASP 22-0051. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you so much for your time and your support, and a special thanks to Jeff and Terry and the planning team. We appreciate it. Thank you.
We want to thank you for hanging out for 3.5 hours with us.
Mr. Spence, approval of minutes.
Yes, ma'am. So you have 3 sets of minutes, November 2nd, November 9th, and November 16th.
To the chair. Motion to approve the minutes for the study meetings for November 2nd and November 9th, and for the regular meeting of November 16th, all of 2022.
Is there a motion to, you made the motion.
Support. I'd make the
Okay,
motion.
okay, you support it.
Somebody else needs to support.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Martin and second by Commissioner Huntington that we accept the minutes for November 2nd, 2022, the study meeting, November 9th, 2022, the study meeting, November 16th, 2022, the regular meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to open the meeting for a public comment. Public comment? Public comment?
To the chair.
Yes.
I'd like to thank my committee members, my commission members for all their hard work and efforts during this year, and thank the leadership of Director Crode and Spence for their excellent leadership.
Thank you.
Is there any additional public comment?
I would like to thank everyone for their welcome, for us coming, because it just told me something different.
Thank you. Thank you. Any additional public comment?
I'm in agreement with my sister, and thanking you all for being patient with us and answering our questions and telling us what we can and cannot do.
Is there any additional public comment? I just have to say, at 10 o'clock, my bell goes off. Thank you all for tolerating me during this long meeting. If there's no other public comment, I'm going to close the public comment section. Mr. Spence, is there any miscellaneous?
The only item that I have, ma'am, is obviously happy holidays to you all. The next meeting of the Planning Commission will be on Wednesday, January 11th. So you get a few weeks off.
I just have a couple very quick comments. The master plan was approved by council on December 12th. We're making the final edits, and then we'll distribute those plans. And thank you for your diligent work on this for these past 2 years. Also, I think we'll be adopting the new calendar Mr. Spence?
It'll be in January.
In January. And I'm just throwing this out. Tonight was unusual, it was a long meeting. If you feel that 6:30 is, start time is still best for you to get home from work and eat and get here, great. If you want to consider starting at 6 p.m., we just always ask that on a yearly basis. And we can discuss that further in January, but we'll work around what's best for your, the commissioner's schedules. And happy holidays to you as well.
Thank you.
Is there any other additional miscellaneous? Given none, I adjourn the meeting at 10:15 p.m.